Good afternoon and welcome to the November 17th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. Up first today, Council, we have the consent agenda regarding the minutes of the Council meeting held November 3rd, 2025, the minutes of the Special Committee of the Whole meeting held November 5th, 2025, minutes of the Special Committee of the Whole meeting held November 6th, 2025, minutes of the Special Council meeting held November 12th, 2025, and also approval of today's Council meeting agenda. Do I have a mover and second for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Grenz. Any comments, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That carries. Thank you. You just made it, Councillor Perez. Welcome. We have presentations on the agenda today. We have the first presentation from Diamond Head Consulting regarding the urban forest strategy for the City of Parksville. A presentation from Amelia Nidoba of Diamond Head Consulting regarding the city's urban forest strategy. Amelia, are you appearing? There you are. You're in the trees up on the screen. Good to see you. I kind of would have guessed that would be your backdrop, just saying, but great. Yes. Amelia, welcome to our council meeting, and I'm going to just hand it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to Mayor and Council. I'm really pleased to be here, able to present Parksville's first urban forest strategy, which is associated with a 15-year action plan. The purpose of this strategy is really to give the city a long-term roadmap for how you can protect, grow, and manage the urban forest moving forward as the city continues to change. Now, I don't have the presentation controls, but do you have access to the presentation on your screens? Oh, great. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's coming up now.
Yes, it's coming up very clear. Yeah, no problem.
Excellent. Okay, well, if someone else is likely controlling this for me, so if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide, please. So today I'm going to give a brief presentation, just providing a quick overview of the project and explaining a little bit about the context for why urban forest management is important. I'm also going to summarize a bit of what we heard from the community during engagement and share just a little bit of the current state. There's a lot more in the actual report itself. And then finally, just briefly touch on the implementation plan and some of the key recommendations that are in it. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Yeah, so really what the urban forest strategy is, as I mentioned, is a long-term plan. It sets out the vision, the goals, and then contains specific actions for managing Parksville's trees out to that sort of 15-year action timeframe, but with that long-term 2060 vision. We have established a recommended canopy cover target for inside the growth containment boundary. And that's because that is the area within which most of the change is happening in the city, but it's also where the city has most of the influence in terms of managing the urban forest. We also undertook a comprehensive LiDAR-based analysis of the urban forest canopy and assessed ecosystem services valuation, and then looked at Parksville's policies and standards, and then looked at those in the context of the pressures that are on the urban forest in terms of climate change, in terms of development and pests and diseases and things of that nature. Along with the canopy cover target, there are some performance metrics in there at the end as well that are intended to support tracking progress on implementation through time. Next slide, please. So this was the vision that was drafted, and really we drafted it to try and reflect what we heard from community in terms of placing a high value on habitat, clean air, water, shaded streets and parks, and generally having a greener city for future generations. And the vision also then recognises that management piece, that in order for urban forests to thrive moving forward, that we have to engage in active planning, protection, maintenance, and stewardship. Next slide, please. So this project actually began some years ago. We started work in 2021, and the background review and analysis reflects the work that was done during that time. We then went out to public engagement, and then from there moved into drafting the strategy. We had a little bit of a pause in the project timeline just due to staffing changes. And so the strategy's been in draft and now is moving towards finalisation and has been brought before you today. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Yeah, so just to provide a bit of a definition of what's included when we're talking about urban forests, really it's all of the trees and forests and associated resources in terms of soil and vegetation in those forests that occur within the municipal boundary. And that's whether they exist on public or private land. It includes trees growing in natural forest areas, as well as the trees that are growing along streets or in backyards and parks. So in the strategy itself, we do also distinguish a bit between the management of the urban tree assets, those like those that exist in streets, and then the natural forest areas. And that's because the way that we manage those natural assets is quite different. So natural forests, generally, they're more self-sustaining. We manage them as a population, but sometimes we do need to step in. So when we see extensive western red cedar decline, for example, where we might have invasive species, if we see erosion or other risks that need to be managed in relation to how people are using those forest spaces as well. In contrast, our urban trees require quite a bit more management. We establish them, we need to sort of prepare sites for them to live in, we plant them, we need to water them, and we need to regularly prune and have ongoing maintenance of those trees over time. And so understanding that distinction is important because it helps us assess the different management requirements and costs related to the city having those different program focuses. Next slide, please. And why do we want to have urban forests in cities? Well, really, just like other municipal assets like sidewalks or streetlights, trees are providing services that enhance the quality of life in our cities. We increasingly understand the relationship between trees and coolings and the role that they play in creating more comfortable urban environments for people to spend time outside in. They also intercept rainwater and pollutants, and just generally make our cities more sort of beautiful and comfortable places to spend time. And then, of course, our forests are also providing important habitat and ecological function, as well as recreation values for members of the community. The report does include a bit of an assessment of the ecosystem services that we can estimate using tools like the National Tree Benefit Calculator and a tool called iTree. And those tools estimated that in terms of Parksville's municipal tree assets, that they're delivering more than $320,000 in benefits each year related to stormwater management, clean air, carbon storage, and energy savings. And those estimates are really just sort of a fraction of the services that trees provide, but these tools are available to help really convey that trees are performing valuable services. When we think of the entire urban forest and look at all of the canopy, both in, not just on municipal property, but on private land and regional land and provincial land, the estimate goes into the millions in terms of the services being provided by those forests. As well, I think it's really important to note for urban trees that really we're only receiving these values at their sort of maximum level when trees reach maturity and are of a size where they deliver those benefits. And so it's critically important for us to be able to manage the life cycle of urban trees so that when we plant them, they survive, they grow, and they reach that level of maturity where we're seeing healthy, long-lived trees that provide the benefits that we're actually managing for. Next slide, please. And next slide, thank you. Yeah, so just touching on what we heard during public engagement in 2021, we had a survey where we asked various questions about what people valued about the urban forest and asked for input on a potential vision statement. We also we present some of those results in the report, but just to touch on it here, this image in front of you represents one question that was asked, and we asked people first to identify from these set of photos what their streetscape looked like today, and then from the same set of photos we asked what they would like it to look like in the future. And so really what this shows us is that, current streetscapes, we've got some of these streetscapes that are fairly green and they have this kind of informal mixed spacing of large trees or medium trees. And then we have some streets that really have few or no trees. And so those are the kind of most common typologies of streetscape at the moment. And then when we asked what people preferred, well, the good news is that a lot of them like that mixed spacing, sort of large or medium species that you do have today, but then also would like to see more of those regularly spaced large size trees. And so I guess this just from the survey responses gives us a sense of what at least these respondents would like to see, as sort of greener streets in general. When it came to the vision, we heard about, again, more sort of having more street trees, more green spaces and mature large healthy trees and diverse tree species. And that those preferences, generally led to sort of medium or large trees in streetscapes. Next slide, please. I guess I'd also like to note in relation to some of the questions that were asked in the survey, we did hear that residents also expressed a willingness to pay, respondents expressed a willingness to pay for those expected levels of service, and about almost 70% were willing to pay at least sort of $25 per household, just as an indication of the support among respondents for making changes that would improve the urban forest. One of the other tools that was utilised was this online mapping feature, where we asked people to share the places that they valued or the places that they'd like to see improvement. And so in terms of places where people valued, a lot of those were favourite places in parks or in the Parksville wetlands, Top Bridge Park, and areas near the waterfront. And then areas needing improvement were generally neighbourhoods that had fewer trees or sort of limited shade and were a little bit more exposed. So this type of input can, help inform where people would like to prioritise, future planting or where there are spaces that, really need to be enhanced or are cared for to maintain the things that people are valuing in the city. Next slide, please. And next slide, thanks. And so when we looked at the urban forest, we both looked at the physical data of its extent, as well as assessing the program relative to this set of sustainable criteria and indicators that was developed by the US Forest Service. So that looks at a range of different criteria across the 5 areas that we've established as goals for the urban forest. And in general, Parksville rated as fair in many of these cases. Strengths include that the city's tree inventory, the canopy inventory, it has staff have established operational guidelines, and there's also some regulations in place that do, cover tree protection and tree management. And now we have the Urban Forest Management Plan. In some of the areas for improvement we looked at, there's a need to increase species diversity among urban trees, and that's just to increase resilience to potential pests and disease, improving cooperation and partnerships and engagement, improving standards for tree protection and planting, and formalising some more proactive management approaches for urban trees and management of risk. Next slide, please. So we measured the city's canopy cover using a tool it's a remote sensing based tool called LiDAR, where we develop very high resolution capture of the tree canopy extent across the city. And so that data is a very fine scale down to 25 centimetres, but we can summarise then the extent of canopy in all kinds of different geometries or geographies. So the results showed that Parksville today has 36% canopy cover overall, but when we're looking just inside the growth containment boundary, it's only 29%. And that difference, as I mentioned before, we focused within the growth containment boundary because that's where we anticipate most change and where most of the city's influence occurs. We have recommended a canopy cover target of 32% by 2060. That timeframe is intended to just reflect that we anticipate there, will be development change. We have had to deal with a fair bit of western red cedar decline, and it's going to take time for the city's program to sort of be able to scale up and plant trees and achieve canopy cover growth. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so the strategic framework is built around those 5 goals of plan, grow, protect, manage, and partner. There's 16 strategies under those 5 goals, and then we have 66 actions. So it's a significant number of actions in the plan. And really they're intending to be responsive to some of the big issues that the city has been experiencing related to sort of declining health in forested areas, related to sort of development and health of urban trees, infrastructure conflicts, and some of the gaps that we saw in policy and maintenance capacity. Next slide, please. And so within these 5 goal areas, I've just summarised some of the highlights for action in the strategy. So these include updating standards for tree planting, for replacement and protection, looking at providing incentives for retention and planting with development, establishing a more formalised urban forestry program, expanding tree planting and restoration where possible, improving preventative maintenance, and building capacity through community outreach and partnerships and volunteer initiatives. So that just gives you really the highlights. It's a pretty lengthy document, but I will leave it at that, and very happy to receive your questions and your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. That was a great report and excellent recommendations as well, I have to say. We're very excited to review it. I went through it again, the entire report this weekend as well, and looking at it and looking forward to working with our staff for implementation of what we feel is necessary and what's within our abilities. So thank you so much for comprehensive report. Well done. This is now open for any council members to ask questions, comments, or so forth. Go ahead, Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Amelia, for the great presentation and the document that's very, very thorough. I really enjoyed reading this, and I'm pretty sure the residents of Parksville are looking forward to some of the recommendations if we can implement, as you saw in your surveys, like people really appreciate. I do want to start off by reading one line that really, I would say, made my day when I read in your report that trees make people happier and healthier. And it's such an important thing in an urban setting that increases livability, but also property values we see increase when we see more green space and trees around. My question to you is about the goal of 32% tree canopy. And I see you mentioned the growth containment boundary being 36%. So perhaps these data might be from 21 because the great growth containment boundary was changed to the entire boundary of City of Parksville, I think in 21. So that statistic might be a bit off. However, I want to go to you about the 32% target. I would like to see more than that when other municipalities are looking at about 40% by 2050. Why didn't we aim for a 40% tree canopy in City of Parksville to be at par with Duncan, Courtney Comox, and all those beautiful places? Thank you.
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question. When we develop these canopy cover targets, there's quite a lot we have to take into account regarding the sort of existing land use and the potential for change, as well as the capacity of the the land base to support more trees and for the city to be able to fund the planting and maintenance of trees on the public realm too. So we tend to look at ways in which we can influence either policy or programs to protect or plant more trees. At that time, I guess it's good to note, or important to note, the growth containment boundary has shifted, because that will affect potentially how this number is calculated, especially given that there's a lot more forest outside what was the growth containment boundary previously. But all that is to say, I guess, is that we build canopy cover targets on the basis of existing land uses, what planned land uses exist, and then what we can model as in terms of what canopy cover can be supported by those. And so while 40% is a fantastic goal, it's often these things are sort of plucked, and we often see between 30 and 40% are common targets that cities are adopting. So we wanted to give something that would be sort of realistic but ambitious as well. And that's how we sort of came to that 32% number. But thank you for noting that boundary change. We'll follow up on that.
If I may follow up, Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
So thank you, Amelia. So to clarify and like paraphrase what you just said, the 32% target takes into account the OCP designations of the lands in the city. Okay, to make sure the anticipated growth, that how it may affect the tree cover canopy. Thank you.
1 second, Amanda, if you just hold on a second, our CAO has a comment right at this point. Thank you. CAO Kaler, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The urban growth containment boundary has not changed in that time frame. So there's some parts of the city that are not in the urban growth containment boundary, like parks and ALR properties and the estuary. So that may be where the confusion is, but the urban growth containment boundary itself has not been amended in that time frame.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, CAO Kaler. Back to your comment, Councillor Gore.
I am done my first question. I will
Okay.
leave it.
Did Amanda have a chance to respond to that last part, or are you satisfied? You're satisfied, Councillor Gore? Thank you. Okay, that's great. Councillor Martin, you had your hand up. No? Okay.
I didn't have my hand up. It was about
Oh, you were
Yes.
just waving to
To
Councillor Grant.
get your attention, but
Okay.
what I will say though is, as far as the trees are concerned, and you know this, and our council knows this, and I want the citizens to know I'm supportive of anything we can do to maintain our trees healthy and a happy life that we will have if we have good trees in our life. So that's how I look at it totally. So I wouldn't hold anything back as far as looking after our trees. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Any other comments? Councillor Peel, did you have any? No, you just pointed. Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Sitting at this table, I really appreciate the presentation. I do like the chart that, as with any asset, I like the chart that relates cost, even if it's kind of ranges of cost for the goals. Because at this table, we want, of course, it's very easy to support more trees, but then there's a cost like any asset with it. And so I really did appreciate the implementation plan pages where you have the timelines along with the financial impact. Because anything that we do to increase our tree canopy, of course, will have costs either on private land or on city-owned land. And so I really appreciate that that you put together that chart in part of your presentation, Amelia. Thank you.
Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to Amelia. Thank you very much for the presentation. I also really appreciated the graphic that showed the variety of trees that are present, be it a native forest, city trees, private land, and so on. And I do appreciate, we often do hear around this table about the extra challenges, let's say, that are faced when we have street trees or, trees along the boulevards and the impact on infrastructure, whether it be asphalt or sidewalks or what's underneath the ground. And I do appreciate that that comes with an added cost, but I think it's important to also, as you noted there, the effect of cooling on streets and the benefit for people using our streets, our roads, our sidewalks, and our paths. So it's nice to have that full continuum reflected in this report, and I look forward to reading it more thoroughly. Thank you.
Councillor Grenz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our delegation, Amelia, thank you very much for the thorough report. Very exciting to have this come to the table. I think everyone, loves trees, and I love. I've enjoyed planting lots of trees at my place and love seeing them grow over the years. And I'm surprised how much they've grown in the time I've lived here. I do have a question around interface issues. And there, I guess, a couple aspects to this. One is that we've seen this past summer unprecedented wildfire occur at the Wesley Ridge Fire with fire behavior that, according to the Forest Service, is completely unusual for our region to see here on Vancouver Island, which definitely makes us all nervous to have. Sort of the downside to trees is that the fire risk that they present. How do we what is the next step as you see it to address concerns about wildfire, coupled with the fact that we have a very complicated boundary in our region jurisdictionally, where, I mean, you'll have noted the maps that you have in the report, how Parksville has all kinds of a sort of mishmash of boundaries all over the place. How do you recommend that we move forward to operationalize mitigating its wildfire risk, especially when much of the risk actually comes outside of our jurisdiction in the city of Parksville?
Through Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that question. That's an excellent one, and it's a more complex one to answer. But I guess through the intention of the strategy, we have made recommendations that relate to wildfire in the sense of supporting a community wildfire protection plan, which would be a more sort of concerted effort towards addressing some of those jurisdictional differences and what the city itself can do to undertake preparedness. We've also tried to be sensitive to the vegetation risk elements, and particularly so, for example, through that, to ensure that through regulation we're not preventing wildfire management, and we're encouraging the use of appropriate species in areas that are an interface concern. So certainly, some trees are more flammable than others, and we see that there are certain types of landscapes as well that are more fire resistant. So usually those that involve deciduous trees, or if people are having gardens, and those areas tend to be more have higher moisture content, and so there's certain guidance that can be provided to residents to related to Fire Smart, but also that can be supported through city policies as well to encourage Fire Smart landscaping choices. But yes, the plan itself doesn't target wildfire to the same extent that a wildfire protection plan would, and that's why that recommendation was included.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I understand that it's maybe a little outside the scope of the report, but I guess it's something to flag as we move forward on implementation.
And Amelia, I noticed in your report, anyways, there was some highlighting on one of the maps detailing deterioration of the Western red cedar in our areas, and it was highlighted as such. And in your description, it described it as being stressed by drought conditions and so forth. Of late, like I've been around for a while, and I've noticed the deterioration of the red cedar, which was quite alarming and such. and we weren't really sure what was causing it and so forth, and talking with the parks, but I mean, it's not talking about my own properties as well, where we saw that suffering going on. And yet, of late, for the last 2 years, the Western red cedar seem to have been recovering. And it is just a hope, a wish, and a dream that I'm having here. But it seems like they're much healthier now. I notice they're looking more robust and putting on growth like they hadn't for the last 5 years. I wonder if you can comment on that, because many of these ones, like as much as I recognize our park staff try and provide good environment and maintenance on our tree canopy and so forth. Many of these were in areas that were not able to be irrigated. You know, we basically, the red cedars had to rely on nature as they've had for millions of years. So if you could comment on that, have you seen a change around, or is there anything that you can help explain this phenomenon?
Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Mayor, yes, that's a great observation, and something, yes, that has been remarked on. As the time has passed, I guess our understanding of the lead up to that Western red cedar decline event, sort of a pulse over a couple of years, where we saw it in a really widespread way, including down in the United States as well. But yeah, the thought is that the underlying cause is sort of this moisture deficit, this seasonal sort of drought that's occurring and exceeding their tolerances, but also that heat dome event, those very high temperatures are also thought to have contributed to this sort of decline, this pulse of decline. And then I guess since then we have seen a little bit more, temperatures haven't been as extreme. Summer drought, well, it's been up and down, but it certainly doesn't seem to be having the same, that we haven't seen that mortality continuing. So I suppose I don't know if it could be a cause for hope if that more extreme event is something that's very unusual and doesn't happen very often. But I think it's probably too soon for us to tell overall, because we are still seeing a long-term pattern of decline in both Western hemlock and Western red cedar over a very large geographic area. So I think it's something we continue to monitor, but it might be something that we also continue to experience periodically.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, in between the heat domes, the atmospheric rivers, you know, it's a changing pattern out there right now. So we're learning as we move forward here. Thank you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ask Amelia about the infrastructure to do with trees. I've noticed in my own neighborhood and also in the city that trees have been planted. And do you recommend now trees that are not going to be going under sidewalks and causing problems? I know in my own neighborhood, we have that problem. Do you do that? Is that part of what your report is? Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Martin. That's another great question, and another significant issue that all cities are facing. I would say that the way we tend to address it is by recommending standards that will create a good growing environment for trees such that they don't they're not ending up in conflict with infrastructure. And we can't always achieve that, but typically the things we have to think about are having so if we're talking about a tree in a sidewalk, having sufficient width in the boulevard so that the flare of the trunk and the roots isn't as close to the sidewalk and we don't get the lifting. And having sufficient soil volume, sometimes even under those sidewalks, using something like soil cells. That means the roots will grow sort of normally and deep. Whereas what we often find is that trees are planted into really small constrained environments, and then their roots end up near the surface because the soil around them is quite compacted. And then that increases both speeds up the conflict and then increases the extent of it too, as those surface roots that are close to the sidewalk come and lift it. So yeah, the way we deal with it it is partly species choice, because there are some species that are more prone to those issues than others, but also looking at the standards and ensuring that we're putting in decent growing environments that are going to minimize those conflicts where possible. It is a higher cost though, so that's where we sort of have to look at trade-offs to get the, where we can achieve those outcomes versus areas where we might have to accept a smaller tree, for example.
Thank you very much. I found that because of the kind of trees where I live, the cost of infrastructure, trying to have to replace sidewalks and all those things is exceptional. So I think it's very wise. I don't think people realize this. Developers and that, they go ahead and just put some trees up, but it makes a difference, like you're saying, what kind of tree and how it's done. So I thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments for Amelia at this point? Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So Amelia, in your document, you talk about low impact development and some DPAs that we can utilize to protect natural areas and the trees. So looking at the city of Parksville, and I see that you looked at the OCP and everything, were you able to identify certain areas in the city of Parksville that could be suitable for these designations? Perhaps the waterways like the Englishman River or the Shelley Creek areas, were you able to identify those?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Gar. We, I guess, at this point, we didn't necessarily delineate those areas, so there'd be another process to do that. But there is already, certainly around sort of waterways, through provincial regulations and then through municipal development permits, there are some protections in place already. So really, it was recommending that those sort of be looked at in terms of how they could be enhanced to maybe improve the outcomes with development in areas that are not currently covered by those regulations.
Right. And if I may continue, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. No, it was good to see some of the recommendations that you mentioned about updating some of the bylaws. So it was good to see that there is room for improvement and for us to do better. So thank you for all that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comments? Councillor Grant? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe another question, if I may, through to Amelia. Can you speak a little bit about when looking at the urban, when looking at the canopy percentage targets relative to, so we've got the numbers today, to what extent are those numbers going to be higher than they may be for certain larger parcels that are currently undeveloped, but under the OCP or zoning could be developed and would maybe significantly affect the tree canopy coverage if they were developed?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Grans. So we did try to take that post-development condition into account. So we, of course, it's not a precise prediction of the future. It's really based on the assumptions and information we have available, input from staff on areas that we're likely to redevelop in the future, and then the land use plan itself and sort of thinking about what that form of development would look like. We did assess on a land use level what we felt like the canopy cover potential was. So we have factored in, that some areas forest will likely be lost, and then we can put in place, landscaping requirements that will result in some recovery of that, or planting elsewhere that will help to make up for that difference. So to answer your question, I guess specifically, we did include canopy loss and future planting in our assumptions based on our knowledge of the land use today. And so that has informed this target setting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, I'd like to thank you once again. Oh, sneak. Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Since it's about the trees, I thought I'll ask one more question.
I'm surprised.
So Amelia, I know you started the work in 2021, but a lot of changes have happened since. Specifically, if you look at the provincial government's Bill 44, that's asking for all the densification, and you're seeing that around Parksville as well. Recently, you see more compact housing. Now, single-family homes and lots that have a smaller footprint with large mature trees. Now they're allowed to build up to 6 multiplex units and things like that. I don't know if that was taken into consideration for the future. I know it's a lot to predict what will happen, but these zoning changes and the provincial regulations have and would potentially, I think, will change our numbers quite a bit. And this is important. What your report has done is very important information that you've provided, because very soon we will be revising our OCP. So this will be very, very helpful information. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor, thank you. That's an excellent question, and something that, with all the cities that we're working with, sort of addressing zoning and OCP changes to reflect these housing mandates. So it wouldn't change our assumptions tremendously, except that staff might have had more insight into sort of the anticipated rate and location of some of that development. We are actively sort of working through various processes to prove out that the types of targets that we've developed for these land uses are still possible, and we're doing that in other municipalities, and we are finding that there are opportunities if zoning looks at things a certain way in terms of prioritizing a sufficient setback or a consolidated area for trees, that in many cases we can still have trees hosted, and then where we can't, then really the onus shifts to the public realm and having a sufficient boulevard to still be able to have a shade tree in the street if you can't have it on the private land. So those are more detailed sort of solutions, and staff might have comment on that too, but those are things that can be considered through those tools like zoning, like the subdivisions development servicing bylaws.
Thank you. Councilor Gore, going once, going twice? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Amelia, it was very informative, and I know we have going in community of the whole, our director of planning is going to touch on this even further. So I will bid you adieu, and thank you once again for your presentation. Well done.
Thank you.
Council, as I just mentioned, we're going to move into committee of the whole now to have a little more relaxed conversation. Do I have a recommendation that this council do now resolve itself into committee of the whole? Have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Beal. All those in favor? Thank you. We're now in committee of the whole. The first item under consideration for committee of the whole is Mr. Russell, Director of Planning. Would you please provide the presentation regarding Director of Community Planning and Building implementation of the Urban Forest Strategy? If you would, Mr. Russell.
If I may, Mayor and Council, my presentation covers the two spheres of trees, which is the private sphere and the public sphere. So it's kind of like the tail in two cities. It's
Yeah.
kind of
Got
sort
Charles
of theme.
Dickens. Yeah, I got it.
So first we're going to touch on trees on private property. And there's really two tools, which I think has been touched on. One is the tree bylaw, and the other are development permit areas. So these are the two main sort of planning land use tools that we have that address trees on private property. So there's some interesting aspects. So the authority to have a tree bylaw comes from the community charter, and it allows council to impose a bylaw to regulate, prohibit, or impose requirements in relationship to, and one of those items is trees. There are, however, limits on this authority. And I think one of the key points is in the legislation is it talks about the development potential of the land. And so a bylaw can't be so onerous with respect to tree retention that it prevents the property from being developed under its permitted land use, that be its density and its use. And if such case that a bylaw does do that, then the local government is required to pay compensation to the owner under the legislation. So that's just sort of a background on the tree bylaw aspect. Our bylaw doesn't do that, so we haven't had to deal with that. Historically, there's been 3 tree bylaws in the city starting back in 1993. The first 2 bylaws, what was interesting about them is they have a number, the main premise, there's a 50-centimeter tree that was protected. There's some other specific species that had higher level protection than maybe our current bylaw. But what's interesting is that residential parcels less than 0.6 hectares or 6,000 square meters or roughly 60,000 square feet, unless they were in a development permit area, they were exempt from the tree bylaw. And that essentially carried over as well into the 2006 tree bylaw. So if we were to look at the 2006, 2012 bylaw itself, not taking into account any of the development permit areas, based on our current parcels, the properties in yellow would be the residential parcels that would have been subject to the 2006 and the 2006 and the 1993 tree bylaw essentially. In 2012, the bylaw was modified and updated. It now applies to again trees that are 50 centimeters in diameter, or any tree within 30 meters of the natural boundary of the water. And so there are some things where a tree permit isn't required. The bylaw's intent is to prevent the frivolous removal of trees, not the necessary removal of trees. And so if you have a building permit within a certain distance of the perimeter of the building, as long as you have a building permit, you wouldn't require a separate permit for a tree removal. The other is for the city undertaking maintenance of trees, or if it's an emergency, the tree is like snapped in half and is falling on a house. So there's some parameters for that where something is exempt. The current tree bylaw would apply to all the residential properties because that 0.6 hectare exemption no longer applies. This is just a really quick comparison to some other tree bylaws. So if I was to generalize some of the differences, I would say that they have their definition of a protected tree may be a slightly smaller diameter than our current bylaw. So if we look at Qualicum, they have 30 centimeters versus 50 in Parksville. The city of Nanaimo has a much more complicated table of different types of trees where obviously certain species are maybe favored or are culturally more significant than others to that community. So they have different, different regulations in that regard. So in the future, as we do public engagement through our official community plan process, there may be some, that may be some of the questions that the public may raise, and there may be opportunities to revisit aspects of the tree bylaw in the future on, what some of those thresholds are, and as well as information from the urban forest strategy and informing that. The other area which was touched on is development permit areas. And they're typically where you have natural features or hazardous conditions, or in commercial areas or multifamily, the architectural form and character. And this is based on guidelines. And these would be our development permit areas. And in these areas, there is a similar principle. So under the Local Government Act, a city can vary aspects of its zoning bylaw to better achieve the goals of the development permit area. So in the case of development permit areas that are near, say, the English River, council could consider a height variance to allow someone to develop their property under their development right that their zone allows for, while maybe having a less land intensive, but maybe a more vertical development to do so, as an example. The potential hazard conditions map, the red color is actually our current wildfire interface development permit area. This was based on a wildfire interface plan that the fire department undertook a number of years ago, and it is based on the Fire Smart principles. It's my understanding that the fire department is looking to update their wildfire interface plan in the near future, and that would have the opportunity to inform our future development permit areas with respect to wildfire interface management. One interesting point is the province has limited local government's ability to regulate building materials. So in our current DPA, there are building material aspects that we're no longer able to, other than someone voluntarily agreeing to them, we're no longer able to enforce them. So anyways, these authorities are always interesting. So this is just our tree cutting removal permit application. This is going back to May 2013 through to this month. So there was 256 permit applications to cut or remove trees. We average about 26.7 applications per year. Unfortunately, our software is a little lacking, so I'm unable to extract how many trees those permits represent, but my anecdotal evidence would be between 1 to 3 trees on average for a tree cutting permit. The city also has a tree rebate program. It's run since 2019. There was 117 rebates issued, 177 rebates issued in total, 25, averaging 25 per year. I don't know if there's any correlation between the 26.7 and the 25. We don't know. In total, that would be a disbursement of $8,732 granted in total, roughly $1,200 per year, and typically $50 per tree is provided. Now we're going to move into the public sphere boulevard trees. So the city has over 7,000 boulevard trees, and they are mapped in our GIS system. You can visit each tree as well as their condition, and you can see the ones in red are trees that are in poor condition where future maintenance would be anticipated to be required or possible replacement may be necessary. It does take resources for this type of data to be maintained. So the normal life expectancy of an urban tree is about 80 years. Many of the trees in the city are not reaching maturity. This is a result of conflicts with infrastructure or declining environmental conditions. And really to get the benefit of those trees is when the tree starts becoming 20 to 30 years old. So, you know, as I said, we're due to some of the constraints, we're not achieving that longer longevity that would be desirable. Separate from the trees on the 7,000 trees on the boulevard, there's probably more than 11,000 trees within our park. So there's at least 11,000 that have been inventoried. And then right now, these are managed without a really specific plan, really just following best practices, but it's reactive both in the park and on the street. It's when the tree is dead or falling or is ripping up a sidewalk, that's when it's being addressed. So it's not a proactive plan. And that's reflected right now in the 2025 Parks and Urban Forest budget. It was budgeted for, I'm terrible at reading numbers, $115,800. And thus far, the city's a little over budget at $121,488. Some of this requires specialist contractors. So just a little bit above 60,000 was for specialist contractors. Historically, smaller portions were funded through various park budgets, but we can see the cherry picker cutting the tree that was dead. So there's also been an increased call for service, particularly as the trees approach the 20 to 30 years of age. So in 2011, there were 61 requests for service. By 2025, we're now approaching 175 requests for service. And then there's a tree before, and there's it again, sort of threatening someone's house. Each one of these requests must be assessed and responded to by general park staff. It disrupts other operational functions. So if someone's in the middle of grading a parking lot, let's say, they might get called out to assist with assessing a tree that's a hazard. At this time, the city doesn't have a dedicated arborist position to proactively administer trees in the city. So really, it's based on requests for service. where the staff labor alone is in the vicinity of $100,000. This doesn't include things like leaf collection or trees in the park. That's really the boulevard trees. And there's reasons why, some of the challenges are we have constricted road allowances. There's challenges replacing boulevard trees. So what operations has done is in some cases offered tree rebates to have a tree planted on a private property in a situation where it was not possible to replant a street tree on the public boulevard due to, for example, underground infrastructure, which we don't have control over, such as hydro or tel or cable. Rebates cover approximately a third of the cost of the purchase or installation of a tree. In anecdotally, operations staff has indicated that not many homeowners are taking up the rebate offer. And that's sort of the extent of covering both the private sphere and the public sphere. And it's really just to sort of provide a sense of the state of things today with respect to the resources and regulations on the trees within the city. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Well done as always. The questions from council or comments, if you would, while Mr. Russell has the microphone on. Council? Any questions or concerns? Councilor Grens, go ahead.
Thank you. Sure, I'll open up the question. Thank you, Mr. Russell. I wonder if you could maybe speak a little bit to some of the efforts undertaken recently by the city to plant trees. I think that was not in this report. I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
If I may, Councillor Grens. Yeah, so in 2021, the city planted 3,000 trees. Over an additional 3-year period, the city planted an additional 7,300 trees. Typically, where the operations department sets a goal of roughly 200 trees per year is their sort of ideal minimum goal. And so those would be the most recent numbers that I have.
Maybe a follow-up comment on that is it's been great to see the city collaborate with community groups to plant trees. We saw last year in the wetlands, for example, a number of trees that were planted with the participation of several community groups. So that's been great to see.
Thank you. And I just want to point out with, as Mr. Russell mentioned, we have the GIS system with our staff have mapped every tree in the city. And they have, periods of maintenance and what's needed and severity of drought on the trees and so forth. And they're doing that. So we're doing that very proactively right now. I was Councilor Fraz myself. We're part of the last council anyways, when they brought in the GIS system anyways, and we were able to see it hands-on on what that looked like. And it was just an amazing system anyways. It's like actually feeds into the calendar of this tree needs attention for pruning this month, this year, and so forth. So it's very, very adaptable to local conditions. And so that's our parks board actually managing that program already in place. They're doing a great job on that. Councillor Beale, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Yeah, Councillor Gore. Yeah, okay. Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Russell, so about the tree cutting numbers that you provided, can you clarify if it also includes any DPs? Because sometimes, as we saw previously, if there's a DP, like we saw in the industrial park, they do not need a permit. So there's probably the number of protected trees that have been cut could be more if those were part of a DP, correct?
If I may, Mayor, through to Councillor Gore, correct. It's not representative of the entire tree removal in the city. So if a tree was authorized through a development permit, it wouldn't form part of the tree permit numbers.
Okay, thank you. A follow-up question, if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, Mr. Russell, you're probably aware of our OCP guideline, sort of, if I may use that word, that within 800 square meters, people need to have every home need to have access to a green space. So when we are seeing this all densification and our OCP being about 12 years, that's a conservative number, old, are we perhaps looking at revising this number, or how have we been doing with all this development going on, access to the green space?
If I may, Mayor, through to Council Gore, that would ultimately be part of the terms of reference discussion that council will be doing at some point in the new year when the OCP is introduced to council as a topic to move forward with a comprehensive official community plan review. So that would be something that a councillor like yourself could bring forward as part of that discussion. It would be part of a committee of the whole at that time.
Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Russell, for the presentation. One thing I noted in the presentation is that our city does not have a dedicated arborist. Now, it seems to me that if we had, or if we do eventually have a dedicated arborist, that then we could in fact be more proactive rather than reactive for the benefit of everyone. In your opinion, from your experience, would a city of our size normally have a dedicated arborist? And a second part of that, is there sufficient demand for a full-time position of this nature? Or perhaps it's our CAO. Thank you.
Go ahead, CAO Kaler, if you can address that, please.
Thank you. Oops, sorry, can you hear me? So through you to Councillor Beal, it really will depend on the level of service that a city has. So it's not, I wouldn't say so much around the size of the city, but the vision and the goals that are set through that level of service. And it depends, like if council wants to see a more proactive approach or wants to see proactive approach on the liability side of things, then I think what staff are saying is that we need to have that resource. Many of our staff in the Parks Department have expertise in tree management and have arborist qualifications through the ISA, which is the Society of Arborists, I think. But we don't have a dedicated resource. So anytime something happens with a tree, those staff are being pulled away from their kind of operational priority to deal with that item as it arises. And we are seeing more and more of those issues around, as was mentioned by a few folks here today, lifting of driveways and impacting pipes and underground infrastructure as the tree kind of grows over top of, say, a sewage pipe or something like that. So again, it'll depend on what council is expecting in terms of the implementation of the 66 items that were recommended. And I think our intent would be through the OCP process and other planning processes to get a sense from council, what that vision looks like. And then we could provide recommendations as to how that could be staffed and funded. And possibly even, I think, identifying those partnerships, which we do already have with both community groups and also BC Hydro is a really good partner for us on a lot of tree items. So yeah, I think basically the bottom line is it depends on what you're hoping to get over and above what we already currently do. And I think some of the indications of the change in requests for service are really obvious that if we don't change that response, then we're going to just see park staff pulled away to deal with those items in a more increasing frequency, I would say.
Good. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the arborist, is it possible and would it be practical, and this is something we would discuss at the OCP, of having a contractor as an arborist so that the staff aren't pulled off their other jobs? Professional, thank you.
CAO Kaler, if you would, please.
Thank you. If I may, through you to Councillor Martin. We do use contracted arborists at the moment for things like removing large trees if they're dead, or dealing with pruning on, we don't have like the specialized equipment. So we certainly spend, like I think the note in the presentation was around 65,000 on that service. The challenge with that is more in the proactive and the planning side of things. If you don't have a person that's familiar with our bylaws, for example, and our policies and our parks, it's just more tricky for them to provide anything other than the reactive.
Any other comments? Councillor Grants, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe through to staff, the recommendations in the report do attach some dollar figure sort of ballparks to them. To what extent was staff involved in the scoping of I assume not that much in the scoping of the costing of this, and these are kind of just sort of general ballpark numbers that the consultant provided. And if that's the case, then presumably we need to do some more detailed scoping. Were we interested in moving forward on some of these? And I guess curious how that process would look.
If I may, through to council. Yeah, so we did some preliminary kind of number crunching. And so the note mentioned, or the report mentioned, that most 40% of households, which isn't most households, 40% of people said that they would be willing to spend $25 per household. We have about, that's being generous, like not more than 5,000 households in Parksville. So that's about 125,000 a year, which is nowhere near anywhere close to any of those items being implemented. My concern with the report and what I think I had mentioned to a few members of council is it's somewhere around $8 million to achieve what some of those recommendations are. And I just don't see how that's going to be possible for a city of our size to spend that on trees. But I think the concepts and the ideas around balancing trees and valuing trees with all of those other values that we have is very valid. And I think the report provided a lot of great metrics and baseline information for us to start building and continue building from. I think what our staff have talked about as kind of a preferred or a wish for us is to focus on planting the right trees in the right places. We do have amazing parks, and we have some areas where trees are very problematic, and it might be more appropriate for the private areas to have the trees on their property so they can manage when their driveway is impacted or any other items that might arise for them. And we would then focus on, in some ways, higher quality trees in more appropriate areas. And so I think what our wish would be is that if we're going through the OCP process next year, we'll be getting a lot of input and engagement from the community and from other stakeholders and from our staff. And we would be able to come back then in 27 or end of 26 when the OCP is being considered with some more implementation recommendations. Our current OCP has a whole chapter on implementation, and it's kind of broken out by theme and by area, and is integrated so that you're balancing all of those things and not just looking at just trees. And I guess the other piece of it is we also plant a lot of shrubs. So those aren't captured in any of the things that we've been talking about, but shrubs are also very critical in certain areas, especially riparian, for example. So our request, I guess, or our suggestion would be that staff be able to come back with an achievable, sustainable plan at some point, most likely, as I mentioned, after the OCP would make most sense to us. But certainly, I don't believe those costs are reflective of how much it would actually be, number one. And there's just so many items there that it seems unachievable to have that size of a budget. That's more than half of our budget.
Thank you, CAO Kaler. Also, I was going to comment that just recently we had, I believe it was over 250 trees were just planted in the area adjacent to Top Ridge Park, and which was really in a great area that has been bereft of trees, well, probably since it was clear cut way back when it was used to be a city dump in that area. So that was really good news. My question is, have we taken advantage of, in the past, Trees Canada, of course, has a very vigorous program of providing grants and incentives for Canadian municipalities. And I was just wondering, is that the mass plantings that we do, have they've taken advantage of that, or are we just running it out of off the side of somebody's desk?
Thanks. If I may, through you, I don't know specifically about Trees Canada. I know we've definitely been beneficiaries of grants from BC Hydro. I think when the Canada 150th birthday happened, we got a grant, but that might have been Trees Canada. I just can't remember the name of the organization. We also, as I mentioned, and Councillor Grenz mentioned, we work with Bellina students and with a lot of our
Right.
stakeholder groups. And we get trees, either trees donated or labor donated to do tree planting. And then our staff show folks how to do proper tree planting so that they can continue that tradition on their own. So we've definitely had some grants, but a lot of it is like we have a minimum target, I guess, that we fund through our budget. So each year there are targets set to plant a certain number of trees. And then some years it's much higher if we get those grants. I think one year it was like 3,500, which is a lot of trees. And that was part of the, it was definitely a Canada Parks initiative, I think 2 councils ago, where the goal was to plant like 1 million trees across Canada. So I can't remember who gave us that money, but we worked with many groups and planted that 3,500 that year, which is pretty amazing.
Great. Thank you for that. My point being the fact that if we take 250 to 300 trees in a mass planting, that does an awful lot to increase our canopy in an area that is probably not subject or suitable for development. And so we're getting our canopy needs met by doing that in a place where they're not going to be taken down at some future DPA improvement process. So I'm very enthusiastic about carrying on with that. Thank you. Councillor Beale, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was also just wondering, thinking about the connection with the report that's been presented here and also our recent asset management information that was shared with us. And so my question is, if this report about the urban forest management will be able to inform our future asset management around the topic of natural asset management, will there be some, let's say, conscious information gleaned from this?
If I may,
Go ahead.
yes. Short and sweet.
Excellent. Thank you. And since we are in committee of the whole, or if there's any members of the public who would like to come up to the microphone to offer regarding the urban forest strategy that we've been discussing for the last little bit here, you're welcome to come up and to the microphone here if you'd like to have any questions or comments at this particular time. Any members in the audience? Okay. Yes, absolutely. Yes, you do. Yes, because Councillor Gore can't hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so, okay,
You bring it to you if you like.
I think you can hear me now, right?
You're good.
Okay, good. So
If you identify who you are. Yeah.
absolutely, yes. So my name is Heather Ranson and I live in San Periel, so the regional district of Nanaimo.
Welcome.
And the reason the question I have is around Parksville bylaw officers and their ability to support the bylaws, the tree bylaws that we have in place, especially on weekends, because I have heard people trying to call the city on the weekend when they see a significant tree being cut in a private yard, for example. And of course, there's nobody there to anticipate or to respond to that. So is there a policy or is there a way that the public can help the city maintain this tree canopy? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
Just
Yeah,
out of
Councillor
clarity, are you asking about Parksville bylaw officers going to the RDN to enforce bylaws and?
No, the RDN is just where I live. I'm asking about the city of Parksville. So, you know, anywhere, any Parksville residents, for example, who take down a tree without getting a permit, as they should, based on the bylaws, should be subject to a fine or, you know, there should be some implications for that. But if they're not reachable, if it happens on the weekend or under the cover of darkness, then what can we do?
Okay. Thank you for that, Heather. Yeah. The weekend warrior loggers, right? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, in my previous home in Victoria, we saw homeowners cut down just even public trees that bordered on their property overnight. And you know, these are not irreplaceable, but it would take 30 years to replace these trees. So how can we help the city.
Right. CAO Kaler can address that for you, Heather.
Yes, thank you. Through you to council and also to the public. I would caution against doing that because we have bylaw officers that work 7 days a week. So we don't have any gaps on the weekends. And that's been in place for a number of years. So I definitely encourage anyone who is concerned to call our bylaw. We have people working 7 days a week and working later shifts in the summer season. So there's even more extended hours there. There's also a wrap line to call for trees that are on like the estuary or on park that's provincially controlled. And we have issued very significant fines when someone has been found to breach a bylaw. It can be thousands of dollars, and we have issued a number of times, which we usually let council know because people are not happy at all when they get caught with that. But we also have some situations where a person might perceive that a tree is being illegally cut, but it actually is allowed to be removed for whatever reason. So sometimes there may be confusion there, or, you know, someone might think you're not allowed to prune or remove a tree, but the person has an approval or they have a hazard assessment or something. But we have had 7 day a week bylaw coverage for some years now. So that's not a way that you're going to get away with illegally removing a tree, in my opinion. And the best way for people to help us is just to call our, like we have both after hours, but we have a bylaw officer number, which is available, as I say, 7 days a week. So call us if you see something.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Gore had your hand up again. Did you?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a question through you to staff. I heard some concern and rightfully so about the impact of trees on the infrastructure and stuff. I wonder if staff is aware how other cities are doing when other municipalities are setting those targets of 30% or 40% canopy. How are they able to manage those tree canopies on their streets? Are they just planting the trees as us into the parks, green space, and taking that into account? Or like, what are other cities doing to increase their tree canopies on their streets?
CEO Kaler, if you would, please.
Thank you, if I may. I guess my first thing would just be to caution about comparing areas, because if you look at the city of Burnaby, for example, they have Burnaby Mountain, they have Burrard Inlet. Like there's a lot of areas that may be contributing to some cities' canopies that are not developable or not easily developable. So I just would throw that caution out there. But I am aware of some really great new modern technology that we actually don't really use yet because it is a lot more expensive upfront, where you can plant street trees within kind of like it sounds kind of weird, but like within a cage that guides the roots a certain way and protects the infrastructure. But it is a lot more expensive than our current practice. So that is one of the things that, again, if we had an arborist or if we had, you know, the ability to kind of be proactive, we could look at maybe a higher upfront cost, but lower overall costs. And this has been a while since I was at a conference with MIA, which is our insurance provider, where they had a great seminar on that exact thing. And at the time it was something like 8 times the cost. So that seemed a little bit hard for us, especially when we have 7,000 trees, as was mentioned. But I think there are certainly new technologies and new ways, and then also species selection. And then it is also about choosing the right place. So there might be some streets that I think, as the consultant even mentioned, they may be too narrow to have a tree because of the existing infrastructure, but there's also accessibility considerations that we need to think about. And so we have had some concerns just in our own city of trees that are kind of planted in the middle of a sidewalk because that's where they're not going to impact other things, but that makes it challenging for folks with strollers or mobility aids to get around. So there's a lot of different things that go into the placement of a tree and the type of tree. And we're also looking at some of the ways we require developers to put trees in, including even the timing. So there's, I think, a lot of proactive things we could be doing to mitigate that. And I think maybe the easiest one is to look at updating that new technology and perhaps having one, if you space the trees a little bit more, so you might have one fewer tree, but you have a better, healthier tree in that system. I think there's a way we can balance, some of those costs. And then, of course, realizing that you're saving money in the long term.
Thank you. Can I follow up, Mayor?
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Kiva. So the reason I bring it up, I think we have an opportunity here, especially like with Jensen Street and also Alberni, when they're getting those major infrastructure upgrades to perhaps try and improve the streetscapes. Speaking of recommendations that you mentioned, I don't see why, personally, I don't know, I could be off here, but I don't see a lot of investment in terms of money or resources to recommendations A, 2.2, 3, and 4, when they're talking about updating the tree management bylaw or the subdivision bylaw. Is that something staff would consider looking at?
If I may, through the mayor, yes, that is kind of the easiest way, I suppose, to look at making some changes. And that would also typically be informed by the OCP engagement process, but also if there's we get advice from MIA on an ongoing basis based on claims. So we have been actually having conversations with MIA over the last few months around some of the liability issues that we're facing. They're quite similar, with people's driveways and yards being impacted by trees that were planted 20, 30 years ago.
Thank you. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a brief comment or thought. I hope that when developers or whoever is planting trees, that there's some thought given to rabbits and preventing damage by rabbits, because I know that can be a real problem. And you see these little trees that they're hanging in there for a while. And unfortunately, the developer they just need to be fine for a year, and they might make it through that year. And then there's a quick decline after that. So I just wonder about, be it rabbits and deer, beyond the watering and other needs for the trees.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Grants, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, since we're in committee, sure. I just want to make two comments through you to council. Maybe one further on the good point raised by Heather is it should be known that just like any bylaw and most really any law that there is in our community, that a lot of it isn't done on a proactive basis, that there's a police force that's out there making sure that no one's breaking the laws, but it does rely on people in the community reporting folks, because most bylaws come about because someone's reported something and is more reactive than it is proactive, since we don't, whether it's speeding or whatever, there's only so much that's done to proactively ensure people are following the law. But it's a point that should be made, I think. Secondly, I think there's, and maybe this is Councillor Gore's kind of getting at this, when we look at the tree canopy, I think it's easy for the number to be skewed quite a bit if there's certain areas of the city that have a lot of trees, and then other areas of the city that don't have a lot of trees, but then the overall number looks good. Kind of like if you were to look at these, sort of the average age of Parksville residents compared to the median age of Parksville residents. Those are very different numbers. And when you're, depending on what you're measuring, you're going to kind of get different results. So if we were to look at maybe certain parts of the city and say, okay, these are more urban areas of the city, what's an appropriate target for those zones? Maybe it's 15% or 20%, as opposed to other areas that may be 35%, 40%, 45%. The report kind of covers some of that in differentiating between within the growth containment boundary and outside of that. But per my question to the consultant, I think that can get skewed quite a bit if you do have a high concentration of trees in an area, when maybe people in the community don't feel like the goal is actually met if there are certain areas of the community that really have no trees at all. So that's, I think, something that we should look at as we move forward with this. Thank you.
Councillor Fraz, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are really good comments as far as looking at different percentage for different areas. In my opinion, what I anecdotally think happens is that it can't just be important for us to think that the tree canopy coverage and target. It has to be a community effort. And one of the things you often see happen is that everybody likes the trees in somebody else's yard, but they don't want to be taking care of them in our own yards. And I know I have a couple trees that they're pains in the butts. They, clog my gutters. So I got to go clean the gutters and got to clean up the leaves, that type of thing. Because they're important to me, I keep them, and they provide a lot of benefit as well, the shading and cooling in the summer. But I've noticed around in my neighborhood, many trees come down over the years. And with that, then you have the loss of the wildlife and the sounds of the birds and that type of thing go on. And it's unfortunate to have that go on. Those are in established neighborhoods as well. And so if we're just looking at new development areas, a lot of the already houses that are existing, those neighborhoods then slowly start to lose it and erode over time. So it has to be a community effort where everybody gets on board. Like I say, we can't just implement some of these things for bylaws in the future. It has to be a vision that everybody shares and works towards, and it happens at the home. So that's why I understand when you mention about, seeing the trees that's maybe encroaching the property, maybe it's a nuisance on them. We have to realize that there's a value to it, and looking through the strategy here as to what really targets that part of it. How do we get people on board with that value? And I don't know what the answer is to it, but is it the education part of it? And how do you get someone to buy into that vision as well? Because I don't see that. I don't think it's an $8 million problem that we have here, and that's going to solve that. And so maybe to your point there too, about having zones where we have different percentages, because it's unrealistic to look at neighborhoods from the 70s and 80s of reaching these 40% targets if the trees just aren't there.
Right, and it's a good comment. Both council members have made here, and it has to be community buy-in, and maybe the tree rebate program is a great program, but maybe we should market it a little bit better, and maybe marketing to the fact that maybe there's a contest involved. If for the year 2026, if you're the 37th person to apply for a tree rebate, there's a gift. And so we have something set aside, like many of our community members, would donate a gift, whether it's a spa package or something like that. You never know whether you're going to get it, but just putting a little incentive into it to maybe outplant your neighbor, so something like that, just to market it just a little better, maybe is part of the answer here. Councillor Friess?
Yeah, just playing on that, the idea of almost getting a credit or some kind of bonus off your property tax for those that are already established and so on. That way that there's, it's not a rebate that you're going to get $50 for, but if aside from to contrast the idea of rather than charging $100 more per household to then implement a strategy that get you there, if you already have this many trees, then maybe it's $100 deduction from your taxes, that type of thing. Not that I'm suggesting that's the way we go, but that type of thinking might be an easier shift and easier to reach than charging $100 more to then down the line, hopefully get us somewhere.
Well, I hope we can make that retroactive. Just saying. Okay, that's great. Councillor Gore, we're going to wind this up here now. Or so, one last comment. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask the CAO, perhaps, I would like to make a motion to have some of these strategies being taken care of when we do the OCP committee of the whole. So maybe this is a good time to make a motion to have strategies 1, 2, and 3 being part of the OCP RFP process.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. So we're in committee right now. So the recommendation would have to come back to council anyway, but we are planning on having a committee of the whole for the OCP specifically. So that might be a more appropriate time to discuss the entire scope, and maybe keeping in mind of those 3 priorities that you have, Councillor Gore. But you can make a recommendation from committee to a future council meeting if that's what council would like to do.
Yeah, I would prefer to take it at a later date. Maybe you put it as a notice, if nothing else, so that you can suggest that you want to look at 1, 2, and 3, so that we can take that and study that. Councillor Gore, I don't like really taking them off the floor like this, because without any advance, it's hard to do research in a effective way.
Well, I thought that was the purpose of the committee of the whole, but I am happy to give a notice to have these included during the the future meeting, whatever staff thinks is the appropriate time. But strategy 1, 2, and 3 from this report be included for consideration of council.
That's fine, just as a recommendation that a report. Yes.
Good.
If
The
you
reason
could
I brought it up, Mayor, I wanted to tell you that, there's so many things that each council member may have, they consider as important as we open up the OCP, and things come up as we go through these meetings. So I want to make sure we don't forget about these things, and perhaps the staff will not. So that was the reason, being proactive, I wanted to make that motion.
Yeah, I understand that, but at the same time, I have council members at the table right now asking what 2 and 3, what is 1, 2, and 3? So it may be if you could call out 1, 2, and 3, what is those recommendations?
Thank you, Mayor. So the strategy 1 is to establish a canopy cover target, which was of 32%, as it said. Strategy 2 is to update municipal policy to reflect best practices of tree planting. That talks about all the bylaw updates. And strategy 3 is to provide incentives for tree retention and planting through the development process, what Councillor Fraz was mentioning about.
Thank you. A comment from Councillor Fraz. Go ahead, sir.
So just to be clear, those strategy 1, 2, and 3 has 13 different points to implement. Like you're suggesting all of them, all A1, 2, 3, and then A2.1 to 0.7. And
Yes.
A3, so 13 points in there?
That's correct. Yeah.
So you're asking for a staff report on that, is that correct? Or
I'm
CAO
not-
Kaler?
Thank you. If I may, I think maybe this is important to clarify with Councillor Gar, but what I think was being asked was that those 3 strategies be brought forward for discussion on the OCP scope, so that when
Correct.
we're looking at priorities for what to look at in the engagement strategy with the OCP and get feedback and prioritize the specific implementation actions, those 3 strategies would be reviewed and discussed. I believe that's what.
Yes.
At the OC's scope of review, right?
Thank you.
That's correct.
I believe at that meeting, we would be getting
Yeah.
direction from council on the scope, and then
Sure.
throughout the process, the community would give input to council. Council would review them in more depth. Staff would be able to provide some context and costing and things like that. And at the end of the OCP process, council will make a final decision on what the implementation of all of those OCP things would be. So I believe Councillor Gar was just wanting to expressly review that scope
Right.
in the next
Yeah.
kind of year, I suppose.
You're basically putting in a placeholder.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, fine. Great. So that could be a recommendation from committee of the whole. Do you need a mover and seconder, or it's just a recommendation?
Thank you.
That's-
I believe at this time it would be more of a notice of motion that would be discussed by the committee when we're talking about the OCP scope towards the end of the year. We're scheduled to do that towards the end of the year. Worst case, it'll be the first meeting in January.
Okay, as long as staff has that notice of that, and then
we're
it
good.
will be done. There we go. Yeah. Is that good, Councillor Gore?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Councillor Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I had already made notes about that and was going to bring it up for the OCP. So it sounds very good and I appreciate this.
Yeah.
Thank
this-
you. Yeah.
That's usually how it goes, but yeah,
I
yeah.
thought so, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great. Sure. We got a record of it now. Perfect. Any other questions from anyone about the urban forest strategy? Okay, I think I'm going to call a 5-minute break if I could. I see some people jumping around in the seats here. So I'd like to call a recess anyways at this particular time. We'll resume at 2:45. Thank you. Okay, we're back in session here. If we could resume now, Councillor Gore, we're in session here. Are you back? Councillor Gore? Calling Councillor Gore. He's still showing up there, isn't he? I mean. Okay, there you are. Okay, that's great. We're resuming now, Councillor Gore, so thank you for your patience, everyone. Moving, we're recognizing we're still in committee of the whole, everyone, and so we have Ms. Dufour. Would you please provide the presentation regarding the implementation of the Transportation Master Plan? If you would, Ayla, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with Mayor and Council today about the Transportation Master Plan. I have a brief agenda just to outline what I'm going to go over. I'm proposing an introduction, really a reminder of the Transportation Master Plan projects and their general categories. The projects that are currently underway that we're currently working on right now, some sidewalk gap considerations, and some specific projects for discussion that are not currently included in the budget. So the Transportation Master Plan broke out projects into certain categories, namely planning projects, quick progress projects, general roads projects, pedestrian and cycling network connectivity projects. Examples of planning projects are like the downtown parking and circulation study. Quick progress included things like the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, the RRFBs at crosswalks. General roads projects included things like improvements to the intersection of Island Highway East at McCarter Street. Pedestrian network improvements included the Alberni Highway sidewalk installation, pedestrian facilities to connect Community Park and the Englishman River Bridge, and Stafford Avenue East, Jensen Avenue West sidewalk installations, and fixing the gaps in those sidewalks that are currently existing. And the cycling network connectivity examples of those projects are similarly on Stanford Avenue East. Also, like as an alternative route to the Island Highway, Alberni Highway cycling facilities, and Pioneer Crescent. So those are just examples. Those aren't all the projects. There are many others. The projects that we currently have and are currently working on right now are these 7 projects. We're working on other projects as well, but these are the ones that are from the Transportation Master Plan. So we have Stanford Avenue East renewal and active transportation improvements, Shelley to McCarter. That project is currently in design, and it can be seen on pages 15 and 16 of the TMP. We're working on a 20-year capital plan, which is not directly referenced in the TMP, but references the TMP as a piece of information to incorporate into all of our different project considerations. We have the Parksville Pathway Project, Phase 1, from Community Park to Shelley Road. That is currently in design and minutes away from being tendered. We're just figuring out some of the environment or confirming some of the environmental requirements. We have Alberni Highway sidewalk from Stanford to Lee, with the inclusion of a crosswalk on Alberni at Bernard and Dunbar. That's currently in design as well. Jensen Avenue West is from Molliet to Alberni is also in design. And then we have RRFB crosswalks that we've been installing as budgets allow on crosswalks that have been recommended in the Transportation Master Plan or through calls for service and industry best practice. Bus stop infrastructure is something that we have started reviewing and picking locations for potential changes. Part of the Transportation Master Plan was to identify the gaps in the existing sidewalk network. And this did come about organically. Many people brought this up to our attention. So whenever we have a sidewalk, if we have a small piece missing, people were quick to point it out, which was very helpful. So we developed a list of sidewalk gaps, and there were over 50. That's probably not all of them. That was just the number we could gather. And 18 were chosen based on professional best practice, public engagement, and consultation with Access Oceanside. So you can see those 18 on page 15 of the TMP. Many of the areas where gaps in the sidewalk network exist also need utility renewals. Those are based on our utility master plans. So when we have the 20-year plan, which is currently underway, that would kind of guide which sidewalk gaps would get addressed, because we'll be doing the underground utilities underneath those areas. The rest of the sidewalk gaps could be prioritized separately after we know which projects we're going to be doing in the 20-year plan. We understand that council's received an inquiry about a specific sidewalk gap on the north side of Hearst Avenue West, just west of Molliette Street.
Right.
Between a piece of sidewalk that was built as part of development and then the intersection of Molliette at Hearst. This particular gap wasn't identified in the TMP itself. It was identified in that bigger list of all of the gaps in Parksville, but in the TMP, it wasn't brought up as one of the 18 priorities. So we have some potential options that council could consider, which is one, to receive the requests for information and continue with the other sidewalk projects. Option 2 is we could look at installing a crosswalk on Hearst Avenue West, which would link that small piece of sidewalk on the north side to the existing sidewalk on the south side. And that is roughly estimated at $15,000 to $20,000. Option 3 is the potential to fill that sidewalk gap. And depending on the surface treatment, could be anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. More projects to consider are on the following slide. So I think how we'll go forward is just read each of the projects and discuss. Does that sound reasonable? Or I don't know if you want to go through them all first.
Let's go through them all first.
Go through them all first.
Then we'll
Okay,
bounce back. Sure.
Love
So
it.
we'll
Okay.
Take comments.
let's do that.
Yeah.
So project number 1, we have the downtown parking and circulation study. This was recommended in the transportation master plan to guide some of the other considerations like one-way streets or parking changes. And the estimated costs are $200,000 for the study, not the implementation. The implementation would vary greatly depending on what is decided. Number 2 is crosswalk improvements at Highway 19, on Highway 19A, McCarter and Morrison. Number 3 is RRFBs at crosswalks. This is the only item on this list that does currently sort of have a budget. We have an operational budget of $25,000 per year for road safety. And we are able to do 1 or 2 installations per year, depending on if any concrete work is needed to support the RRFB installation. But in general, we can do about 2 per year. So if more are wanted, then we would have to increase that budget. Number 4 is intersection coordination and signal improvements on Highway 19A. Number 5 is Highway 19A reimagining. Number 6 is the Temple Street traffic calming audit. Number 7 is the pedestrian oriented improvements that are on page 11. So the quick win ones. Then we have number 8 is the Parksville Pathway Project Phase 2. So that would go from the north end of Shelley Road to the Englishman River Bridge. Number 9 is the Roscoe to Bay Lane extension and cycling connection on Highway 19A. We have number 10 as Jensen Avenue at Alberni Highway. Number 11 is Martindale and Highway 19A crosswalk improvements. Number 12 is ongoing pedestrian network improvement plans and priorities for that. 13 is the bicycle infrastructure priority plan. Prioritize the 6 recommendations that are made on page 16. And then we have number 14 as one-way streets, which would be subsequent to the circulation study. And we have number 15, Wembley Road monitoring, which is part of our routine operations. We collect traffic data, but we could review this after the OCP is in effect, so we understand what kind of density we might be seeing in that area. And I think that's the end of my presentation, so I'm available for questions.
Great. Thanks, Ayla. That's great. And we have a lot of crossover in between what I just handed out. So, council, that was Ayla's, the one that's yellow highlighted in front of you there. Okay, so that's what Ayla was just talking about. Now, what I did, as you know, the master transportation plans, I attended a bunch of the public meetings and I spoke to a bunch of people, and people groups have asked me to come and listen to them and speak to them after they saw this and so forth, which is great. Because I've always been approaching this from a safety improvement area, safety, active transportation, and trying to do traffic calming. Traffic calming was the biggest thing I heard out of the transportation master plan with the McElhaney group anyways, because people were, I heard more than anything, they're deathly afraid to either bicycle or walk down 19A from Corfield to the Bayside. You know, really, it's just horrible, the traffic that's going through there. So I've approached this from a traffic calming. So I'll call out my ones here. I guess, Amit, you probably don't have this. I'll call it out here. Up front and in center, it was like take the highway out of the highway. And so my first suggestion was rename Highway 19A to Ocean Boulevard. From the off-ramp from South End at Craig's Crossing, all the way to the where the Welcome to Parksville sign is, north all the way to Wright Road. So the entire place, rename 19A Highway Ocean Boulevard. Reduce speed limit from 60 kilometers on the new Ocean Boulevard, 19A. Reduce it from 60 to 50 kilometers from, the whole way through the city of Parksville. Reduce the speed limit from 50 kilometers per hour to 40 kilometers per hour from McVickers to Bay Avenue, which means basically in the downtown core, McVickers to Bay Avenue, up at the other end where all the tourists and so forth, reducing that speed limit to 40 kilometers an hour. The speed limit, 50 kilometers an hour from Bay Avenue to Wright Road at the far north end of town. Rename Alberni Highway to Mountain View Boulevard from 19A, the T intersection down by the waterfront here, which would become Ocean Boulevard, all the way to the train station. So that would no longer be Alberni Highway, it would be Mountain View Boulevard. Reduce speed limit from 50 kilometers an hour to 40 kilometers an hour from 19A to Jensen. So just behind us here so that we have a slower speed limit within town. Reduce the speed limit through all neighborhoods, including Resort Drive, from 50 kms. Some of it have already been reduced to 40 kms, except for dedicated collector roads, as I think A-list department calls them, collector roads like Corfield and Despard would stay at the 50 kilometers an hour. Many other streets in municipalities throughout British Columbia are dropping their rates from their neighborhoods down to 50, down to 40 or 30, because they realize that the any possible impacts is greatly reduced by lowering it just by 10 kilometers an hour. We want to make our neighborhoods safer for our citizens. And as Ayla has mentioned, RFBs add rapid fire flashing beacons as indicated with yellow dots. Yes, staff actually gave me a map and they actually entrusted me with yellow dots. And so I marked it all the way down from one end, basically one end of Ocean Boulevard, the old 19A, right through anyways, to have those rapid flashing beacons. And I love them because they're so inexpensive and they slow down the traffic as well as getting safe pedestrian access across that old highway. There's a suggestion that was also made just recently, close Morrison Avenue at Clock Square, adjacent to Home Hardware, make that a dead end. Add angle parking to the business improvement area district where width allows. So that's just up to engineering to say that street would allow for angle parking, like on Middleton and Harrison. And then right at the new Ocean Boulevard, right where the Scotiabank parking lot is and the dollar store and near Shoppers Drug Mart parking lot, have a series of 4, what they call a scramble crosswalk that goes across there from that parking lot directly to the community park across the street. And I know Graham's here today, but I haven't suggested that. I'm hoping that sometime in the near future, he'll be able to design a new proper entrance to the community park that will pull people out of the community park into our downtown and people who are in downtown into the community park through a scramble crosswalk just done by rapid flashing beacons. At Angle Park, we already got that. And then a delineated bike route from the Visitor Improvement Center, far end of town, along Ocean Boulevard to Tuan Road, which will then hook into Resort Drive, to the new Modi Connector Path, which is going in spring of 26. All the way to past the log cabin store to the Orange Bridge, and then bike route signage only along Pioneer on both sides, not delineated, so that way the people on Pioneer can continue to park on Pioneer, all the way to the community park entrance at Corfield, and then bike route delineated both sides on Ocean Boulevard to Bay Avenue. Signage directing to Temple Street, existing delineated route. So you'll be able to bike all the way through town from that end to the other on a dedicated active transportation bike route. I've walked it, I've drove it, I've rode on it to make this all happen. So this is what I heard from everybody, and they're saying, you should do this. The advantage is what I have here is it's very little cost. There's no capital cost. I don't need no big concrete gaps in my sidewalk, no big studies for 200 grand for a circular route or whatever. This is very doable just by changing signs for traffic, just traffic management and calming. And so that's why I'm kind of excited about this idea. Some people brought this ideas to me and I kind of go like it. And the ideas of naming them, it came from an old citizens advisory committee. I'm not that smart, but anyways, it's stuck. So that is my part of the plan, is that could be implemented fairly quickly, but as long as staff gets a chance to review it. But anyways, so that's all the transportation master plan. My favorite document at all. Safe, calming streets for City of Parksville. Safe. So I'll shut up now. I'll take a breath too. Thank you. So questions to Ayla or myself on any of this, or just what your own ideas or vision that you have gained, because I know you all took this home and read it and took it to bed with you every night until you fell asleep. So any of the council, please jump in and just give us your, because I know a lot of you participated in the engagement programs with the McElhaney group when we did the TMP. And so your thoughts as to the vision that you would like to see. I have, if they're really good ideas, I have a whole package and you can choose your color. I have more dots. There we go. Thank you. And I'm going to give you this one. Go ahead. Anyway.
I have a comment, Mayor.
Okay, who wants to go first? Amit, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Ayla for your consultation with AOA and other community groups, and for your flexibility, actually, to be able to amalgamate the information from the TMP into your work plan. So I appreciate that. A shout out to the mayor for his TMP, or I should say MTP, Mayor's Transportation Plan. I like a lot of things that you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, especially with the traffic calming thing that you mentioned, all the speed reductions. I think a lot of council members hear quite often from our senior citizens and even like young families for the safety of their kids are very concerned. So you have my support on a lot of those things that you mentioned. It would be interesting to see. We might not see upfront cost, like because we just see them as simple speed reductions and whatnot. But looking at the mayor's transportation plan, I wonder if the staff has any input on costs and the implementation of those recommendations from the mayor,
Do-
timeline, etc.
To be fair, Councillor Gore, I was working on this on the weekend and actually I sent it to my assistant on Sunday. Because there were still people calling me, for the last couple of weeks. And so this staff are seeing it as quick as you are right now. So they just heard about it this weekend. I mean, they knew I was coming with it because I've been making all sorts of questions with our staff anyways to what are the possibilities. And as you can see by the crossover from what Ayla has put, there's a lot of the crossover is amazing. There's so much that are included in it too. Just mine are less expensive.
So can I continue?
Carry on. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to ask maybe Ayla or other ops staff if they have any input on, especially one item is the speed reductions. What's the process that other cities like Victoria and others have taken on when they've reduced the speeds? And what's the implementation timeline, including the cost, whatever?
Thank you, Ayla. If you can just touch on that. Yeah.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
thank
okay.
you for the question. I can touch on it just with the preface that I haven't done it myself, from a municipal and engineering perspective. But I worked with the District of Saanich while the city of Victoria was reducing their speed limit to 40, kind of universally. And from what I understand is there are implications, of course, to doing that. One is the need for increased enforcement if the road isn't already showing speeds of approximately the speed that you're going to. I would caution that in my experience, lowering the speed limit alone does not lower the vehicle speeds. And what it can create is a speed differential between those few people who are like vigorously following the speed limit and going the speed that they are supposed to be going versus the people, the majority of other vehicles who are going how fast they feel they should go. So I think the city of Victoria, from what I understood there was, the speeds they were already seeing were close to the speeds that they were going to be posting. But I would say in the case of the city of Parksville, I would tend to look to traffic engineers just to get some input on how to implement that to get results, because that's the key thing is trying to get results. So yeah, does anyone else have anything to add from staff?
Anybody else on staff want to weigh in? CEO Kaler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we would also have to do some bylaw changes because our speeds are done by bylaw. So that would be part of the process. And then of course, we'd have to look at the signs. We do have a sign shop internally, but there would be some costs around changing out the posted signs. And I think too, probably the enforcement side of things, we haven't talked to the RCMP about that, like generically or conceptually. So I'm not sure what process or input they usually have, but yeah, I guess it would be signage, education, enforcement, and then maybe some, I don't know if I don't think we paint the speed on the actual road itself. I think it's all just signs.
Thank you for that, Giva. I have to say that when I did research, and this is funded by myself, I went to Maui. And there's a place called Kihei in Maui anyways. And that's where I first fell in love with rapid fire beacon crosswalks. And they're everywhere. They're literally everywhere because there's a lot. Kihei is exactly the same as Parksville. They have a road. One road it was the Kihei Highway. and that they lowered the speed limit on, but they put the RFBs all the way along it. On one road is the condos and hotels, on the other side is their beach. And so the people are just going like this constantly back and forth. And so when I talked to engineering in Kihei, I said, what came first? And they said it was simultaneous, but they said the enforcement of the speed is the pedestrians themselves. The pedestrians just go up, they just hit that thing and flashing. And he says, and we enforce that on people not stopping at the crosswalks. That's the biggest one, not about speed. He says, you can't speed there. He says, because people, they're crossing all the time. So he says the enforcement was actually provided by the pedestrians that cross over, and they just hit that little button and they just magically walk. And so it creates a whole different, it's a village atmosphere is what they have. But at the same time, the speeds are slowed down. Part of my plan was to slow the speeds down as it got closer into the city. And in the core of our city, it was, going from 50 down to 40, which takes it right down along where the traffic has always gone too fast. So it was the pedestrians that helped us on that. Councillor Frass, go ahead.
Thank you. Just thinking about the Ocean Boulevard, or as it may be called, part of the speed there is that those lanes are wider than standard lanes. So I think to reduce the speed, should also then think about narrowing the widths there. And I think when you do narrow those gaps, then people just naturally tend to slow down as well. So it could be a factor for it, and then perhaps that might provide, a bike path or something on the side. I'd have to look at the staff to know what those measurements and that type of things are. But is that correct in those assumptions there?
And that was exactly where I did the delineated line bike path actually on Ocean Boulevard, just in the strip from basically that would be Bagshaw, one up from Bagshaw, anyways, all the way through up to the McDonald's, basically on both sides of the road would have a delineated bike path. So that will slow the traffic down as well, Councillor Press.
I think part of it though is that our center lane, or that, however you would describe it, is it's wider though than the shouldering lane. Is that not correct? It's like, it has a little bit extra width in there. So I think if you were to do that, you'd have to redraw the center line and then the shoulder portion, everything like that.
That could work too. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And then just to be clear too, these rapid flashing beacons are crosswalks as well.
Yeah, they're solar activated. You see that outside Springwood School. Springwood School has the new one with the solar activated, and they're LED really flat. And then then they have a crosswalk going across. Yes. And in my little yellow dots, I think I have 12, but it goes from one end of town right through, mostly on Ocean Boulevard, because that is the highway that we're trying to slow down. Thank you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the effort you've put in here and these, the vision of the names, and, you've talked to people, obviously. The idea of the path coming along Palmer Road, not Palmer, the road to do with Pioneer Crescent, and then it would come up at some point and they get into the bike paths going through town.
Yeah.
It makes sense, all this, because we need it. We do need it for safety. And I think that the flashing lights and everything will be really good. We've had a lot of experience with this in the last few years, for sure. The number of people that are here and how this will work out. So thank you for the effort. And I think it's
and the Moti connection, from the log cabin store all the way to the Orange Bridge. It was just the icing on the cake. That was fantastic when they have agreed to do that active transportation route. So that makes all of our visitors and tourists a lot happier.
What I was pleased to see that you've looked past the Orange Bridge, because originally the transportation plan was just the city part, and we didn't have much past the Orange Bridge, but now you've come through and you're just doing it all together. So that's very good. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think the amount of development that's going on the other side of the Orange Bridge was perceived at that time. So, but you see what's going on up there right now, where there's going to be a lot. And soon with the Lions here too, in the neighborhood you may be moving to. Thank you. Councillor Well, as the first time speaker, you get to go. Go ahead. I'll come back, Councillor.
Thank you. First, second, third, no. Thank you very much. And yes, I will say thank you for writing down all your thoughts here and gathering from others. And I appreciate, I do look forward to having staff have a look at where these suggestions, recommendations might be implemented or how they could fit into the other plans there. And I do appreciate that, I certainly support slowing, reducing speed limits. And I also agree that having crosswalks or to be able to cross the road can be very effective in slowing down. And we look at what's been done along, I always call it Alberni Way rather than Alberni Highway. And I figure it doesn't need so much of a change. And it also has a nod to the historical connection of how that road came to be. But wording aside, having the four-way stopped right in town has slowed things down wonderfully, and you can walk and you can cross the road. And I've lived here a long time. It used to be a little scarier to cross Alberni, wherever you were. I do think it's important when we think about implementation, if there is a time lab in terms of how it gets implemented, that side streets get affected first of all, because one thing I've noticed is that there are places where people might use a side street where, oh, if I go down this street, I can avoid a couple of traffic lights, and they're going through neighborhoods, including, quite frankly, city vehicles sometimes. And I think, why are they there? So if we can do things to slow down and dissuade people from cutting through neighborhoods, I think that there are still people who live in neighborhoods who are going to continue to go to that upper speed, but it might reduce the number of drivers going through a particular neighborhood, which I think can help everyone. So I think this is a very interesting idea. Certainly, it's a long ways between where you cross along 19A from Martindale to Bagshaw, I think it is where the traffic light is. So it's a long ways, and so things get pretty fast there. I'd also like to add, as Councillor Frass noted, I have read previous transportation master plans, which did in fact note the width of the lanes, and that they were for a time when it was a different designation. It was with the province, and in fact, there is enough room to create narrower lanes and include a space for a bike lane. It wouldn't be your preferred route perhaps going into town, but a lot of people serious cyclists are going to want to just go right through. And the other thing is that provides more of a buffer for people who will be walking on the sidewalk and in fact feel more comfortable doing that. You still, I think, run into a problem. It's a bit trickier from Alberni through to Bay or Alberni to McMillan. That gets problematic, but that isn't something that's always fun for engineers to solve, right? So I think lots of food for thought here. I'd certainly like to see a reduction in speeds. And as I said, particularly in neighborhoods, and even more so in areas that are bike routes, not necessarily bike paths, but bike routes, school routes. We have school buses. There are some streets that are always with people and scooters and all the like on them, and traffic should be slowed down there. I do have one question for Ayla, if I may. Speaking was about the Hearst, the area where Hearst did not have a sidewalk, and there was a request there. And you mentioned that a crosswalk would cost $15,000 to $20,000. Is this just for painting a crosswalk and a couple of signs? Could you just elaborate on that? I'm having a hard time getting my head around those figures.
Sure, I can definitely elaborate that on that. And I think sticker shock is common these days. But what I would say is we're factoring in concrete work there. To put the crosswalk in, you have to put the letdowns that are appropriate, and that's, it's about 3 panels of sidewalk on each side, and then signs and potentially RRFBs if they were warranted. That's kind of the high end of what I would guess prices we would be looking at. So it's really the concrete work.
Yes.
Thank you. And I was wondering if there was any consideration for a temporary solution, as we certainly do have a number of long-time temporary sidewalks. I'm thinking actually further along Hearst. I'm sure it's Hearst when it carries on there. Yes, Hearst and even just here on actually, it's Hearst again, right in town, where there's a temporary, although there are problems there because it is that very dark asphalt and at night it can be very difficult to see the edge of it. There's also one along 19H just past Temple Store that goes along there. But is there any consideration for something like that in the short term?
Yes, we did look at that as well. We looked at the kind of an option of our cart path, like we did on the Island Highway West, from Pym to the bus stop there. That's still $20,000. And then it goes up to about 50,000 if you're doing concrete. So asphalt would be somewhere between those two numbers, probably. Yeah. Thank you.
I was advised that since these crosswalks are letdowns and so forth, the cost of it and so forth, it definitely qualifies for accessibility grants. Because we do it right. We do the proper letdowns with the yellow touchpad as well on the bottom. So, but there's a lot of money when you say it's for accessibility and this is safety as well. I think we get buy-in from ICBC as well on this one to help. I agree. It's the big cost is the letdowns. Yes. Councillor Fraz, go ahead.
One thing, just looking through this, I have a hard time. I don't quite see the vision of the scramble crosswalk. So I was wondering if you could explain that to me. I don't see how versus just a standard crosswalk, the benefit of it. Yeah.
It's a scramble crosswalk. It's bigger than it would be like it's a square crosswalk that would cross right at that location, but it would line up where the name of the road that comes up by the theater. What is that road called now? The access road. Right, yeah, up Ravensong. So Ravenhill. Yeah. So it would align with that, Councillor Fraz. And what it does is that it has two rapid flashing beacons on each side of the road going all the way through. And then what it does is when we have events, when we have like a Tuesday night market or something like that in town, when people go, they go over en masse. Like I've experienced it where at the Dairy Queen, there's the pedestrian crossing there. It's very slow before it actually goes for the pedestrians. But at the same time, it's always super crowded and people always overflow way out of it. And we have so many events in the city, community park now, that we have large groups of people coming up all at once. And so a scramble crosswalk allows a large group of individuals to exit the park or gain entry into the park or downtown and vice versa. It's just the whole concept about this is, we're pedestrian oriented here at this particular place. We want to get you down to the park and we want to get you back into the restaurants and everything up in town, but we want to get you there safely. And it's a great concept. It means two more rapid flashing beacons, but it does. And then my vision is for us to have a proper entrance down Ravenhill, get down into that park and back up again out that hill, because as it is right now, that sidewalk with the stairs going down there are not very safe and so forth. And so Graham didn't know I was going to ask him to do that. On his work plan, it'll probably be 73 years from now.
So when you say a new entrance, you're talking about just a pedestrian entrance, not a vehicle.
Just pedestrians. Yeah, it's just a safe egress for pedestrians to go across that area. It's just a larger volume rather than standard width crosswalk. It's actually double the standard width of a crosswalk. They call it a scramble. Councillor Wood, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I read 19A reimagining unknown post OCP. I think that would probably be a good time to discuss a lot of these changes. Mayor, I love a lot of the things on your list. I think there's a brand new highway that can do the heavy lifting that this highway used to do. And I think any traffic slowing, I think would probably be welcomed by a lot of the community. It's hard to comment on these, piece by piece without knowing timelines and costs. But I think the OCP would be a great time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grenz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council and also to Ayla. I think we had the presentation from Director of Planning around a sort of a tale of two cities. And I think as regards our transportation master plan, we also have kind of two communities here in that we have the year-round people that live here all the time. And then we have a very different situation during the high season in tourism when there's, probably like more than double the population here. So I think a number of the measures that are outlined in both of these bullet lists I have in front of me should be adjusted in recognition of the fact that we have the two different kind of communities happening depending on the time of year. So maybe to touch on a few of them, I am definitely in favor of the idea of renaming, removing the word highway from the wording, because I think the framing and the branding is important to how people perceive what it is they're driving on and how they behave on it. And to Councillor Wood's point, maybe some of that does kind of happen in there, but maybe the name thing can happen sooner than the actual changes. On speed, I think that is also, to Ayla's point, there's more than just a sign that dictates how fast people go, and it's really people drive they drive to the conditions of the road as well as weather conditions and all that sort of thing. So I would personally very much defer to staff on a data-driven approach to signage and wouldn't support arbitrarily changing the speeds just at this table. I would want to see some staff recommendations around that, recognizing that there could be actually a negative downside to trying to dictate that from this table when it may actually not get the behavior outcomes that we're expecting. So I recognize the need to maybe calm, although I didn't know very much calmness about the ideas here. Very excited about it, so that's good. But to calm the traffic, and there are other ways to do that that don't necessarily involve the signage per se. I do have a question. I'm just making sure I have my notes here, I guess, because different things have come up while I've been thinking about this. Very much in support of Mayor's comments around how do we improve the flow, sort of circular flow from the community park up into downtown and back down into the community park. I think that's a significant area that we want to address and that we want to see both for the vibrance of downtown Parksville and the businesses there, and the opportunities to enhance the downtown by getting more people to circulate between the community park, which definitely attracts a lot of people up into the downtown. So how can we do that in effective ways, especially recognizing that we have little control over some of the land that is immediately between our city-owned asset of the community park and the downtown. So that would definitely require some buy-in from landowners and potential developers to make that happen. So my question, I didn't see it in things so far, and it does speak to the seasonality, but there have been concerns raised in the community around the stop sign at Molliet and Despard. And this is definitely not just a seasonal thing when the school year is in session, but also a time of day thing where there's about a probably half an hour window when school is when everyone's trying to go to Springwood at the same time, where we do see backup going on to Alberni Highway, future name to be determined. And there are concerns around the safety of that, of course, at that crosswalk because children are crossing there. And so it's something that there's a history, I think, around that stop sign, and maybe speak some of my earlier comments, but I'd love to hear staff's ideas on that and where that could be incorporated into this. I know it's a small detail, but we're also looking at small details like the like gaps in the sidewalk. So appreciate your thoughts on that. Thank you.
It's a good question, a little tricky to answer, I think, just because I would want a traffic engineer to look at that whole arrangement before making any recommendations on changes, really. And I also want to highlight the crossing opportunity in front of Springwood at Hackberry there. Just in the meantime, it is available and it does have the RRFBs and it is in the 30 km/h zone. I know that people want to use the multi-use path on the south side of Despard. I totally get that. So yeah, no changes recommended at this time, but we could pursue an opinion from a traffic engineer.
Yeah, maybe just to follow up, I think that we should probably move on that and try to get some action or at least some clarification on that, and maybe with the school district's participation. I don't know whether it's maybe the school district brings in a crossing guard program or something to direct people walking in a certain way. I was a proud crossing guard when I was in grade 5, so I think maybe that's an opportunity for some future law enforcement bylaw officers or whatever. But yeah, I think it's something that we should really look at because it's a concern for parents for sure.
I used to be a crossing guard too, but we stopped horses. Just saying, before you suggested, I thought I would jump in. Just from the comment of that, Councillor Grants, I have already been in contact with the school board, and they're not concerned about that intersection. Point blank, I had the meeting with the board chair, and they said they're satisfied with it as it is right now. They did not want to. I asked the question. I said, do you want me to look into this further? Is that a concern? She said, no. I can, so that's Eve. So I can tell you I had that conversation. I'm just saying it, like, we've already been down this road. So I'm not sure that it needs to be done again, certainly not at the behest of the school board. So that was their comment. You can talk to Eve if you like. One other comment I was just going to say about the slowdown, you know, like we just recognized, been recently recognized as an Evolve, I think it's called Evolve, the blue bike people from BCAA, that they're going to take on Parksville as one of the projects. And this could be just so darn timely. That's why some may wait till the OCP review, but I think these are things that can be done in the meantime, because we're getting busier and busier in that darn park and type of thing. And so I don't want a tragedy to jump in. And I think that we could jump in before the OCP, my comment. And with the amount of electric bikes, scooters, and all the other devices that we have right now, they're definitely playing a factor in creating safe transportation routes. So that was that. Next is Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree wholeheartedly with those comments you just made. And perhaps, who knows, perhaps there could be a pilot project in some areas. I do know of a neighborhood that a few years ago presented something hoping to get a change, and unfortunately all the data that they collected over a period of time was lost. So there you go. But I do want to mention as well that even though something might seem like it's going to be virtually no cost or very low cost, I think that you know, there still is an implementation plan, a period, some education, community engagement of some sort beyond what's already been done. And I am thinking about what they've done in the district of Saanich, and I don't know how long it took them to get to the point, because they have reduced all the speed limits to 40. I often visit that area because my son lives there, and I see they've got signage that's in various people's lawns or in the boulevard, like all over the place, to help promote and educate and reinforce. So there certainly is some cost involved, well worth the investment, I believe, but I think it does take more than, you know, here's the sign. I've also heard that there are some, you know, extra requirements, like every new block maybe has to have a new sign, or how these things work. So again, I suppose some of that goes back to bylaws or can we do a pilot project, or are there some things that we can look at to kind of, you know, put the saddle on the fence, get the people thinking about this coming. And I agree, the Evolve project is a nice fit with all of this too.
Thank you. Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm guessing, I think a couple of these questions will already be in the minds of AOA folks if they are in the chambers. Ayla, can you speak to the point number 9 here about the Roscoe to Bay Lane extension? I know AOA has highlighted that as one of the troubled areas for their folks for accessibility and also visibility at night. It's being a very safety concern. I was wondering why the timeline is at 2028. And related to that, I think in the previous slide, it talks about pedestrian-oriented improvements every year, about $100,000, number 0.7. What are we focusing on currently, and what is the plan in the next year or so? Thank you.
And go in a minute, Ayla, but just to answer your question, Councillor Gore, AOA is represented here in the chamber today. And when council is finished their questioning and comments, the members of the audience will be given that opportunity to present their ideas on the TMP.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Ayla. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I will invite Kiva and other staff to jump in here. But what I would say about these projects that you're seeing on this slide, these are not currently included in the budget for next year. So that's why we're discussing them and wanting to know council's priorities on these. For the pedestrian oriented improvements on page 11, those are the kind of, I would say, quick progress projects like RRFBs, like curb extensions, which are an unsung hero in my opinion, and improved lighting. And then for the other project you mentioned, number 9, the Roscoe to Bay Lane extension, that's a general roads project that was identified. It's on the highway, so the thought was that combining it with a Highway 19A reimagining might be efficient. But it's basically to improve the cycling and accessibility, really. Access to turn right onto Temple. So right now, cars are forced to merge into a single lane and then unmerge to turn right onto Temple. But there's space there to just keep the turn lane to have people just turn right on Temple so they don't have to merge and then unmerge. And then there would be also opportunities at that point to connect the existing cycling facilities that are on Temple Street onto Bay and then bring them across to Finholm, which was also identified in the Transportation Master Plan as a potential active collector road classification. So multiple facets to that one project, but combining it with the OCP the OCP post doing the highway reimagining project would be maybe sensible. Yeah.
Thank you. On the previous slide, if we can go back, Amanda, please. So number 2, I think you mean Highway 19A, but can you clarify what those improvements are? Since I live on Morrison, I'm curious.
Yeah, my mistake on that one. Sorry about that. So both of those roads were in discussion. The intersection of Highway 19A at McCarter is currently the pedestrian controlled crosswalk. So that was kind of highlighted by the traffic engineer that helped us with the Transportation Master Plan. Among also the public was noting that some concerns with that intersection. So there are some improvements that could be made there. I do think that if we looked at a circulation study of downtown, that might show or might dictate what would happen at that intersection more. And then I would also say that the Morrison intersection is, because we've been discussing the idea of closing it, which could also be informed by a circulation study. The idea with the circulation study, just for some background, was if we're going to want more parking, a circulation study gives us some options of making some streets one way, which would provide more room for parking, but that's why we provided or proposed to do them hand in hand. And then that leads to a lot of other decisions being made, like McCarter, like Morrison, like the connection to Ravenhill, if that's McCarter or something else. Yeah, so that's why we had the year 2027 on there. Potentially that could be done ahead of other things if we're looking at more short-term, just changes to what's already there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Beal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to mention that I did recently attend a meeting of the AOA and shared that engineering has certainly always trying to look with that lens of accessibility as well. And at one point with one of these, a reference to bus stops and bus amenities was mentioned, and that was discussed with great interest at the meeting. And I was planning to share out many of those comments during my liaison report. However, if there is there we are, bus stop infrastructure. So, you know, certainly of huge beyond interest, importance to AOA, and you know, and a couple of specific areas were mentioned. So very pleased to hear that there's some accessibility working on that. There are places where there's no concrete, and therefore, you know, some people, if they've got a device, I mean, they would literally fall over, they would not be able to get off, or places where people land in puddles and the like. So, but beyond that, there are other considerations. So pleased to see that here. Does that mean that maybe there would be increased money? I think that's something to think about too. Thank you.
I can speak to that a little bit, just that we are aware that there is currently an operational or a budget of $10,000 a year for 5 years. So we're working with the RDN to identify what could be done and where it would be appropriate. Yeah, and to understand kind of council priorities and priorities for the community about what we do with that money.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to questions from the audience, if you would now. We're in committee of the whole. If you'd like to, anybody in the audience would like to come up and have a comment or two, or we have the revolving mic, so, you know, wandering mic. So put up your hand and the mic will come to you.
Thank you very much. It's on the road work. I live on Cypress and Jensen, and I've lived here for 19 years. And you've talked about Molliet, Hearst, the highway, and yet Jensen goes right down the middle from the fire hall to Molliet. You have kids on that road going to school, coming home. You have all the people from the 49er and the Coakley Manor coming down on their scooters, the kids on their skateboards. And yet I have never heard about Jensen considering a sidewalk.
In that portion.
And it's really necessary.
Okay. Thanks, Sue. Staff will make notes of that. So you're talking about the Jensen section that has no sidewalk. Yeah.
You've got apartments on both sides. Sorry. And you've just built another apartment and you put a little tiny sidewalk there. But you go past the fire hall at night, try to watch that road in rain, and then head down Jensen. There's not a hope in hell you're going to get through there without running into somebody.
Right. And thanks, Sue. Mary or Councillor Beal just mentioned on number 5, it's I think maybe it's identifying what you're talking about. Jetson Avenue West, McMillan to Alberni, utility renewal and sidewalk installation.
On Jensen?
Yes.
Whoa. Pardon? On McMillan?
At McMillan. Yeah, because Jensen has sidewalks on this side of McMillan, but going up the hill, there's no sidewalks. I know what you're saying. I believe does that address that, Ayla?
Yes, I believe that
Yes.
is addressing the concern there. And there'll also be utility renewal there with some utilities that are in poor condition.
At the same time.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Sue, it's on the list. Thanks for asking. Ralph?
Yes, sir.
You can't be first, but you can be next.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of comments. The Roscoe to Bay Lane, and it was mentioned earlier about the asphalt, these temporary sidewalk installations that are going on. We have sent in correspondence and our concerns before that while asphalt is highly welcome for mobility device users because no gaps, no jarring of spines, etc. The big problem, big concern we have is a safety one, whereas that there is no visibility to the curb in dusk or twilight or in the dark. And that's our biggest concern. And if we're on quick fixes, a couple buckets of yellow paint going along the edge of that sidewalk on the road to orientate the person that's navigating along that sidewalk, that they don't literally careen off the road, not knowing that they're at the edge. That's just one comment I wanted to make and highlight that again. Alberni Highway is our top priority in the transportation management plan, and we're excited to hear that it's in the design phase. Just if you have a moment at the end, give us a clue when that might happen, because it's a terrifying piece of road, honestly. I, as a driver, walker, cyclist, it's people are not wearing visible clothing. They are just, it's a tragedy waiting to happen on that street. The mayor's transportation plan, can we expect that to be published somewhere on the website so we can have a look at it in more detail and discuss within our organizations? I hope that we can get a copy of it. Oh, thank you very much. And the last one, Morrison Avenue, dead end, making it a dead end instead of turning onto Highway 19A. Totally support that because I did witness the after effects when a car coming off Morrison was slammed into the bank not so long ago. So it's a very dangerous point, and especially for people coming in from out of town that aren't aware that there's actually an intersection there. That's a very, very dangerous spot. My only concern is it's a trap because it's a one-way street for the last half of Morrison. So there's nowhere for cars to go once they've entered Morrison. So I think it's a little bit more of than a quick fix. I think there has to be a lot of design work to see whether you can U-turn cars around so they can get back out of Morrison. Otherwise, I totally support the idea. I think that is a very dangerous intersection. So that's just my thoughts. I look forward to your answers.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you. I just have a couple of comments. To Councillor Grenz, yes, that intersection there, Alberni Highway, Moulet, Springwood School, we live in that area. And if you try to get there when the school's in session, it backs up onto Alberni Highway and it is dangerous. Someone's gonna get hit there when they can't try to make a turn and can't complete their turn and sitting in the intersection. So yes, I really do believe the traffic engineers need to look at that to see if there's a solution for that, because it's a very short distance between Alberni Highway and Mole, and it causes a real problem. And my other comment would be that when we're looking at slowing the traffic, and which I fully support on 19A or reimagined as Ocean Boulevard, that we have to put a balance between having access for cyclists and scooters and pedestrians, with the fact that a lot of our community is senior citizens and need a vehicle to get to where they're going, get down to the park, because they're just not able to do it any other way than in a vehicle. And so we need to strike a very good balance between, don't overreact and get it too much toward pedestrians and bikes and slow the traffic so much that 19A becomes a parking lot. And then a question I was curious about is that if the city of Parksville has the ability to rename Alberni Highway and 19A, or if they're under the jurisdictions of the province.
C.L. Kaler, Yeah, if you can comment on that, I know we've talked to this before.
If I'm, oops, I would have to double check where the city's authority is, but I believe it is at our boundary. But we would have to consult with Modi just to make sure that there was a proper transition. And I'll double check with engineering, but I'm pretty sure that all of our highways are vested in the municipality, so they're not Ministry of Transportation controlled. We would just have to be careful, I guess, around that one little sliver down near Plummer where it's goes to the RDN for like a weird little bit of distance, but I'm pretty sure it's right at our city boundaries that we have the ability to change the names.
Thank you. Was there another hand up? Oh,
Hi, I'm Teresa from the,
Teresa, if you, hold on, Councillor Fraz has a comment on that. The
I
last.
just want to say, but as well, Stanhope towards Wright Road, doesn't that exit Parksville's boundaries as well for the highway portion outside the shell?
If I may, so as long as the road is in the city's boundary, there's some that are on one side of the road, it's in the city, and the other side it's out. So that's an area like down in that area. And I think Grieg Road has one where it's in the city and then in the RDN. So anything that's within the city's limits, I believe, like when it's at the MOT, like RDN boundary, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Then it becomes MOT's jurisdiction and it's a provincial road. And then we'd have to look at our letters patent, but I'm pretty sure that the entire road is in the city of Parksville when the other side of the road is the RDN. So we actually would have to check our meets and bounds. But my recollection for sure on the Grieg Road one is it's the city of Parksville for the full road, even though the property fronting it on the other side is in the RDN. So that just means we're in control of the whole road, which is good that they didn't make it the middle of the road because that would be very difficult to manage. But it doesn't, that has actually been the case in some other situations. So I'll double check again, but our meets and bounds description usually includes the full road right of way, even though the boundary is kind of the side of the road then basically. And then of course it would end where the city's boundary ends. So Wright Road and Stanhope, there's like I think it is actually Stanhope or maybe it's Wright. We'll have to check exactly where, but the full road allowance is within the city's meets and bounds boundary usually.
Thank you. Back to Teresa. Sorry, Teresa.
that's okay. I'm from the Parksville Downtown Business Association, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to make a couple of comments. In particular, the naming of Island Highway and Alberni Highway, love it. As mentioned, the move from a highway to a boulevard not only gives the impression of the need to drive a little slower, but it gives you the feeling like you're driving into something. You're not just passing by it. So thank you for that. The other thing, and I'm sure you all know this, the movement from the park into the downtown has been an ongoing challenge for the Downtown Business Association. So my board is going to be over the moon to hear that you're looking at this. So thank you. One thing not on your list, Mr. Mayor, and you won't be surprised by this question, is the circulation and parking studies. It looks like from what Ayla presented.
Did you say parking?
What Ayla presented, that this is a 2026-27 project. And again, that's really good news for us because we're waiting for that so that we can make plans too. We don't want to invest in a street to find out that there's going to be changes 2 years from now. So those studies are really important for us. So overall, thank you very much. I'm really excited about this and can't wait to get started. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Anybody else in the audience? Any further comments?
I just wanted to comment on the Hearst sidewalk. I was not the person that brought that forward, but I kind of really wish I was actually, because I walk that way all the time coming from my house into town, and you have to constantly cross the road and then cross back over. And I understand the idea of a crosswalk because it would overall be cheaper, but there's for about half that section that doesn't have, then there's sidewalk in between. So it would just be a lot easier for everyone to finish it off. There are a lot of high school students that walk up that way every day, not just a lot of people in the community who walk that way. So I think it would be a really good idea.
Good, yeah, good point. Thank you. Okay, folks, I think we're going to have to wrap up here because we got some other business to do and the Four Lions Club is just waiting patiently here. It's almost breakfast. Okay, any other further comments, council, at this point? Ayla, thank you so much. I think we've worn everybody out. So I thank you for your presentation. And I know I saw staff taking notes on all this going on, so we can move forward with this. So thank you so much, Ayla. So, while we're still in committee of the whole, Jetta, Ms. Holmes, would you please provide the presentation regarding Director of Finance for the 2026 to 2030 financial plan to provide information regarding the BC assessment preview role in 2026 equipment replacement reserve. Thank you, Jetta.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be really fast.
Go ahead, Jetta, sorry.
Okay.
They're leaving.
No worries. This is just a couple of items as follow-up from our presentations in the Committee of the Whole meetings last week. A couple of items that were outstanding that I'll just go through relatively quickly here. The first being we did get a preview role from BC Assessment and then also to take a look at the financial plan for our equipment replacement reserve. The preview role from BC Assessment shows a total change from 2025 of 3.69, around 3.7% increase from the prior year, with most of that, as would be expected in Class 1 residential. Of that total change, 1.48%, so about 1.5% was non-market change. So that's the number that reflects the growth in the community. So that would be new properties on which property tax rates could be applied and utility fees collected from that. If you recall, last week, we spoke of the rate that we include in our utility fees and property taxes of about 1%. So I would say conservatively, we're in the ballpark. I wouldn't suggest that we would go back and change our revenue estimates based on this preview role, because this is a preview role. There's changes that could happen before the end of year completed role, and then again before the revised role at the end of March. And that's the role on which we base our property tax rates. So the estimates that are in the financial plan right now are pretty close. Yep, there's not a significant windfall coming here from this role, at least at this point. Also, just a reminder for council as well as the public that may be watching or listening is often when the BC assessment rolls come out, people immediately think, okay, I've had a significant increase in my property tax or my property assessment. Are my property taxes going to go up? And just a reminder that if everybody's property goes up 3%, then your property taxes are only going to increase by the rate at which council approved. However, if your property changes less than or more than the average for the community, that's where you'll see a change less than or more than the rate increase or decrease that's approved by council. So what we see is at the end of December, BC Assessment mails out the specific property assessments and everybody gets them that first week of January in the mail. And then our phone starts ringing and your phone may start ringing too. So we try and put out some notices and social media and on our website at that point, just to try and help people understand what they might expect from their property assessment change. Just a couple of slides of some analysis around our historical roll change. This looks at changes in total roll value and over the last 10 years. And you can see that that's a pretty steep incline of that line. Our 10-year increase, 2017 to 2026, is the increase is $3.6 billion over that time, 141%. So it has been a very significant increase. But again, that's the whole of the city moving up that line, right? So it's not as though property taxes have increased by that amount or anything like that. 2/3 of that increase has been in the last 5 years. So it's this last 5 years where we really see that change. And again, the total preview roll is $6.2 billion in total property assessment for the city of Parksville. When we look at where the rate changes are, so this is looking at how much did the total roll increase as a percentage, and then what was our non-market change or that kind of growth factor change. So this is quite interesting. You'll see that that blue line reflects the non-market change. So it's actually been a pretty steady growth. And it hasn't kind of had the peaks and valleys that I think many in the community think there has been, right? It may seem to many people that there's been these big peaks in growth, but it's actually been relatively steady. The range on the growth is 1.48% in 2026. So it's our lowest rate in the 10 years, and to a high of 2.77% in 2021. So that's that year where we see a peak. However, there has been significant market change where just generally our whole market in Parksville has gone up with that significant peak of about a 33% increase in 2022. So that was the most significant of this last 10-year change. So I think it's interesting to look at that. Our average over the last 10 years is 1.96% of that non-market change. And again, over the last 5 years where it's been concentrated, 1.8%. So just some interesting analysis around that sometimes doesn't follow kind of what the lore is in the city with respect to how the growth has gone. It's actually been quite steady. Any questions on the preview roll before I move on then?
No. Councilor Grens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Jetta. Thank you for this. Do you happen to have the province-wide number for the non-market change preview sneak peek? I don't want to wait till January.
Through the mayor, no, I don't. BC Assessment is having some challenges with their non-market change reporting. So I've requested that, as well as typically they can provide us a breakdown of why there was different changes and where, and some more statistical reporting around that. They haven't been able to provide that to me yet. So if I do get that, I'll forward it on to council and provide that. But otherwise, we would typically get more of that at the completed roll at December 31st. Okay.
Councilor Wood, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Jetta. If we roll back one slide, Jetta, you wouldn't know off the top of your head what city of Parksville versus say Vancouver Island versus say BC versus say Canada would look like on this graph. Are they all pretty much the same, or just wondering?
I have no idea.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Yeah. No further questions, Jetta? Go ahead.
Okay, our equipment replacement reserve, just a reminder on this. This is our kind of asset management model in the city whereby we have this self-funding reserve for all of our equipment. And how we typically handle it is anything that's on wheels comes into the equipment replacement reserve, with the exception of the fire department vehicles. So this includes our mowers and our snow clearing vehicles and our large trucks and things like that. So the financial plans that were presented to council last week for water and sewer and general fund already reflect the internal costs related to these vehicles. And what the reserve does is collect those internal revenues, and that generates the funding required for the replacement of those vehicles in a systematic way that we plan out for about 40 years. And it's evaluated, of course, each financial plan to really drill down on the 5-year replacements to make sure that the costing is appropriate, that they're actually due for replacement. And our supervisor related to this takes a close look at all of these vehicles to make sure that is there a time that we might extend the life if the trade-in values will still be maintained. So that's kind of our process around that. It is mostly vehicles for all of our operations and utilities, but it does include some pooled vehicles that council may have used that we're typically have parked here at City Hall. One of the things, and these 2 vehicles specifically were purchased through our Canoe group purchasing, which is a program that is available to local municipalities. And we've been using this more. It has significant benefits. One being that there are vehicles available for purchase. 2, it saves a lot of procurement time. They do all of the procurement request for proposals, all of that, and get the pricing. And then we just really have to call up and request what we need, and knowing that they've gone to market already. And 3, it really builds this trust between the program and our users to be able to procure this within the time frame that council has approved. So this was 2 vehicles that we were able to get in relatively short order this year. There wasn't the backup and the supply chain that we're seeing with some other suppliers. And they arrived, they're fantastic, and we're really pleased with using that program. You have a large print copy of this at your spots there. And I know nobody can read this, but really what I wanted to show council was that we plan out these replacements, like I say, over about 40 years. We bring to council what we have on the 5-year replacement. And what it shows is what our gross cost is expected, what we expect for the trade-in value, and then what the net cost is to the reserve. And as you can see, typically we've got in the range of $500,000 of procurement each year, depending if we've got one of the really large vehicles. However, with some of the supply chain challenges that we've had, some of them get pushed out into the subsequent years. So you'll see in 2026, we've got about 460,000 that was carried forward from the previous year that wasn't able to be completed in 2025. So that's coming into this year. The vehicle that's shown here is the sweeper, and it has a planned replacement in 2029 at a cost of about $350,000. Again, that's where we're at right now. Our supervisor related to the fleet is always checking the prices and making sure that we're bringing council as part of this plan conservative estimates on the purchase price, which, as you know, have increased significantly over the last number of years, but also being quite conservative on our trade-ins. And what I've found is that we tend to be doing a little bit better on our trade-ins, especially for trucks. There's a real market for the used ones right now. So we tend to be doing very well on those trade-ins. And just finding that sweet spot on the trade-in between how long we keep the vehicles in service and when we're going to optimize that trade-in value. So there's a lot of work put into this, but you've got the larger copy in front of you for your review.
Thank you, Mary. Councilor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Jenna, I have a question about the vehicles. Have we looked at perhaps leasing these equipment rather than outright purchasing them? And second, I don't know, maybe at the staff level or at the elected officials, has it ever come up for municipalities and local governments to share the equipment? Like, especially Oceanside, we have so many little municipalities and local governments, electoral areas. Has it ever occurred that we could share the equipment, and as City of Parksville, we could even have cost recoveries for providing those equipment to other local governments? Has that ever crossed the mind? Like, because this happens in the federal government all the time.
Thank you. To your first question about the leasing, The leasing analysis is done from time to time. We haven't done it for quite a number of years now. So I can't say kind of what that was at the time. That was, like I say, a number of years ago, pre-COVID, when that was done. You know, it is a consideration. It changes a whole model of things, how we kind of administer it. So not that it's extraordinary. Many municipalities do lease their vehicles, so it's not a rare model, but it isn't something that we've looked at for a few years. With respect to the sharing of vehicles, I don't know that we've had a conversation like that. I would say the only model of that we have is kind of our mutual aid with our fire department vehicles, where we kind of step up with that. But I don't know whether that is something that would be welcomed by other municipalities. I think it certainly impacts staffing levels and union arrangements and things like that, depending if we provided staff with the vehicle, whether someone else's staff use the vehicle. So there's certainly a lot of considerations there. I haven't ever heard of other municipalities doing that in my career, but yeah, I'm not seeing any.
CEO Kaler, if you could comment as well.
Yes, thank you. Through you to council and to Councillor Gore specifically. We share some things, not really vehicles, I guess, per se, but we do share like our emergency trailers with the town of Qualicum Beach, because we have a formal partnership on emergency management. So we have a pet trailer and a vehicle for towing those items that is an EMO vehicle. I think the logistics of sharing other types of vehicles would make it extremely challenging. For example, if we want to do maintenance in the park and we need the pickup truck, but the RDN wants to use the pickup truck for something else, I don't see how that would work in an efficiency manner. Also, then I think there would be implications around our insurance and who is, if an RDN person crashes the vehicle, does our insurance go up? So I've never heard of another municipality doing that. I think it's different if it's the federal government and they're in charge of everything and they make those same, allocation decisions. But we definitely look at ways to, share resources where that's feasible and kind of creates efficiencies. But I just can't think of an example or a way that we would make it work with our day-to-day vehicles. There's no vehicles really sitting around that we're not using. So I couldn't really think of a way to make that work, but.
So if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Kiva, not specifically about like pickup trucks per se, but I was thinking more around the sweepers or the snow plows that we occasionally would utilize. So higher, bigger equipment. And I think you may be right. When it comes to the federal government, it's usually what they call the OGDs, the other governmental departments within the federal government, that they're able to share and then cost recover. And I think it would be great if local governments could come up with something like that, especially like looking at geographically Oceanside being such a small space, so many different governments. There is some cost savings for us to look at. Thank you.
So if I might just,
Go ahead.
sorry, jump in there. We don't have dedicated snow plows we have trucks that we put the snow plow on. The rest of the time, they're a truck. You can see our tractor here we use it for mowing and we use it for plowing. So we don't really have the luxury of having dedicated, and actually it doesn't snow that much here, which is awesome. Which is the best part of that. So we kind of have multi-purpose vehicles that are used for, like, if it's not being used for one thing, it's being used for something else. So we don't have the same redundancy, I guess, in our fleet that maybe some other places might have.
Thank you. My previous life in private enterprise, leasing was advantageous when you're able to write it off. If it wasn't able to write off, as in the case of the municipality, leasing is not advantageous. It's better to go into a group purchase plan like the city has already done. So leasing, the advantage is having that lease rate to write off. And since the city can't do that, it's not recommended.
Okay. Just further to what Kiva was saying, I was just going to say this is the perfect example. This New Holland tractor, which is due for replacement this year, has the snowplow, and then it's also a flail mower. And so when we're replacing vehicles like this, we're looking for those interchangeable attachments so that they can be used as needed. And as commented, some years it's hardly used for the snow and just used mostly for the others. So part of, especially on these larger pieces of equipment that are in the range of $300,000, it's really looking for those multi-purpose and also really looking at, okay, are we still using it for that? Or is there a smaller equipment that could be used instead now, and really evaluating what services are being provided with each piece of equipment to see whether those services have changed and whether there's something that meets that need differently and hopefully less expensively. Sometimes it's more expensively, but just wanting council to understand that there is a lot of thought put into this process by staff. Just again, pointing out that the 3 Chevrolet Volts, those are our electric vehicles, the 2 Nissan vans, and then the GMC flat deck truck and crane. Those are ones that were approved in 2025 that have been carried forward to 2026. Again, there's no impact on the property taxes related to this. It's all funded through the reserve, but just for your information. So the 5-year financial plan is summarized here, and in addition showing the forecast for 2025. The incremental piece in 2026, if council recalls in the spring amended financial plan, council approved not trading in 3 trucks because we needed them elsewhere in operations, and it was an efficient way given that those trucks were still in really good operating condition. So in 2026, those budgets have been bumped up a little bit just to reflect the extra insurance and operating costs related to those 3 vehicles. And similarly, that would have been reflected last week in the financial plans of the various departments that use those. The pictures here is the top one, the Vactor truck, which is due for replacement in 2028 at an estimated cost of $500,000. So this is a big one. And but we get about $60,000 estimated for the trade-in. So $440,000 net coming from the reserve. And then that backhoe there is the new one that was purchased in 2025 with the reserve. So the 2025 forecast is expected to be within budget. The purchases of equipment, of capital equipment, will be less than the budget just because of those vehicles that weren't completed in 2025. And the interest expected to be lower just given lower interest rates that we're seeing that we've discussed in our prior meetings.
Meet or you? Councillor Wood, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Jetta, at risk of, me, playing with the trains and being out of my lane, when we're going to sell that vac truck for 60 and buy a new one for 500, is that due to the vehicle being at the end of its life or insurance purposes or, just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's not like our fire department vehicles where there's an insurance restriction. I think it's our staff that are looking at that optimizing when we see the maintenance costs kind of increasing. We certainly within the reserve have kind of set timeframes that we start off with, but then as those dates get closer to the end of what we've defined as estimated useful life, we start to look at it. Our supervisor starts to monitor the maintenance costs. He checks in with the operators to say, okay, where are we at on this? As well as taking a look at, okay, where's our optimal trade-in value and trying to kind of find the sweet spot on that. So there's a few vehicles, but certainly, we could keep it until it really, really dies. There isn't any kind of formal restriction around that. So it's just really trying to manage those. And we, within our accounting system, kind of track the maintenance costs attached to each vehicle. So we have an understanding and see, okay, why was that really high this year? And sometimes we'll do things like a truck in parks that's being used by a very busy crew that uses a vehicle a lot. We might swap that one back to a supervisor that maybe doesn't drive it as much and put a newer vehicle out with the crew. So things like that to really optimize the use of the vehicles.
Sure. And, you know, Jetta, I have quite a bit of trust in yourself and operations. I just wanted to ask that just because there is a pretty big dollar value between 60 and 500 for those that are watching the meeting. So I wanted to ask.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Carrie.
Okay, that's all unless there's any other questions. This would be just one of the pages in our 4-page financial plan that will come to council as part of the bylaw.
Thing of beauty. Thank you for that, Jetta. Any comments from anybody in the audience? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna wrap this up. Okay, thank you, Jetta. Good
Thanks.
job. Thank you. Okay, council. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation that the committee of the whole meeting be adjourned? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Wood. All those in favor? Thank you. We are now adjourned from committee of the whole. We are back to regular council. We have 3 items of correspondence on the agenda. The Aerosmith Water Service Management Board, the AWS 2026 to 2030 financial plan. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. The next item of correspondence is the Englishman River Water Service, ERWS Management Board, ERWS 2025 to 2029, amended financial plan and 2026 to 2030 financial plan. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Next item of correspondence is from the Regional District of Nanaimo for the Solid Waste and Recycling Development Cost Charge Bylaw. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. First report on the agenda is regarding the Director of Community Planning and Building, a development variance permit application at 421 Day Place to consider proceeding with notice for a development variance permit. Do I have a mover and a do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beal. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. It carries. The next report on the agenda is regarding the Director of Community Planning and Building for a development permit application at 1225 Franklin Gull Road to consider issuance of a development permit. Of a mover or seconder on that, please. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beal. Any discussion? Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I heard from you that the Lions folks are in the house, so I wanted to give a shout out to the Lions. I want to thank them for their perseverance and their hard work on this project. Or if they're gone, maybe I just want to say for the council.
They are still patiently here, nodding off slightly, I think.
Okay,
But,
good.
they are still here. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Thank you for your patience.
thank you for your patience and hello from the north. I want to thank again for your perseverance with this project. I know you've been at it for close to 7 years. Thank you for all the hard work that goes to make this finish, go past the finish line. And this group is all volunteers. A lot of them are seniors. So it takes a lot of work. So I wanted to send my appreciations to you. I do have a question for our Director of Planning, Mr. Russell.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Russell, I was quite impressed with the landscaping plan. We talked about the tree management, the urban forestry management plan. Could you tell me about the protected trees that will come down? What is the plan for the replacement trees that will be planted on site?
If you would, Mr. Russell, thank you.
Certainly, if I may, Mayor, through to Councillor Gore. As part of the landscaping plan, there 50 trees are actually proposed to be planted on site. 23 of these are deciduous trees of a number of different sizes, as well as 27 evergreen trees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I follow up, Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. As council is aware, I think some privacy concerns were raised by the neighbors. I was trying to look into the whole DP, and pardon me if I missed it, but can you mention some of the steps that are being taken either through the ADP or during the DP process to address those concerns, like frosted glasses that we were talking about on the balconies and stuff? Is that part of the DP for this project, Mr. Russell?
If I may, Mayor, through to Councillor Gore, I believe with respect to privacy, the orientation of the balconies in this building face both the commercial property and the museum across Franklin Skull Way. So there aren't balconies facing the residential neighborhood directly. My understanding is the discussion from the design panel, it was not substantial that it made it to the recommendations, but it was really a question regarding the potential for clutter on the balconies, to which the applicant responded that as part of their rental policies, they will have regulations with respect to that. I believe that there's a couple reasons why they've chosen basically the metal railing type patio. One of them is it's more durable. The other is when you're on a property where there's a number of trees, there's more maintenance and washing that's involved when you have glass. The other is the quality of experience of the person living in the unit. If they're sitting on sitting on a chair or a couch inside the unit, their visibility outside is essentially negated by the frosting. So I think with those considerations and the fact that they're gonna regulate it through their rules, that there won't be tons of stuff stored in the balconies, I think that addresses that aspect, I believe.
Thank you. If I may make one comment and then I'll yield, Mr. Mayor.
You got one left.
Thank you. I do want to say this again, that I was quite impressed looking at the plan for this project. So this is not just an affordable place to live, but honestly, I feel like it's a very desirable place to live. And even the neighborhood will be proud of this project once it's completed. So again, thank you for all the work.
Thank you. Councillor Wood, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor, and also a shout out to the Lions Housing Society. Thanks so much for all your work on this. While we were in this meeting, I did receive a note back from the Office of the Premier because I had emailed the Premier on this project as well as our abstinence-based addiction recovery center that we're still waiting on both of them, and we're coming up on 2 years that this council has approved both of those. And his email says from his office, not necessarily him, of course, regarding the two projects mentioned, we have been in discussion with the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs, as well as the Ministry of Health, and confirmed that the appropriate ministry will follow up with you as soon as possible if they have not already. So it is on their radar. And so I was at least encouraged that they got back to me. So we'll hang in there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Lions Society, for being here all day. I'm very excited about this project. I live in the neighborhood and I get so many people that were so many years ago so against it, and now they're all looking forward to seeing it. It's quite funny, actually. It's always the way, isn't it, when you have something like this? It's a big needed project. And I know it'll be done well. And I wanted to refer to those privacy situation that the people are concerned about there. And I remember in our meetings, public meetings, on the top floor and the corners are the only area that will be looking over the neighbors down the street. And there's no actual units there. They're just in the corner, and they would have the stairs going up and down in the middle. So I don't think there's really any concern about the neighbors. So and I look forward to hearing what you were saying, Councillor Wood, about the Premier's office and housing, because I know there's a holdup on this and we have to keep on pushing because I was talking to the executive director of the Lions Society, and he said he's waiting for things to be passed before we can start, because everyone's asking, where is this? Because it's been going on for so many years. And so I'm grateful that something hopefully will be happening pretty soon, because it's obviously very needed. So thank you.
Yes, I can reassure you every time the
Yeah.
MLA sees me walk over to her, she knows what I'm bringing up anyways. Anyways, and so, yeah, it's been constant anyway. So, yeah, it's been a lot of advocating on your behalf. So thank you for your patience. Any other comments? All those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimous. Thank you. The next report on the agenda is from the CAO regarding submission of resolutions for the AVICC Annual Convention to seek council direction on the submission of potential resolutions for consideration at the 2026 AVICC Convention. Recommendation is noted. Got a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. We have one motion from a previous meeting, Councillor Grens, an appointment of a liaison to the Parksville Community Center Society. Notice of the following motion was provided already at the November 3rd, 2025 regular meeting. Do I have a mover second for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Beal. Second, should be, well, actually, moved by Councillor Grens and seconded by Councillor Beal. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Grens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with a heavy heart that I
know.
Bring this motion today. I had a conversation with Dwayne Round about the desire to have a liaison from Parksville Council to the Parksville Community Center Society. And he was looking forward to this discussion today. Efforts have been underway over the past several years to ensure that we can have a good collaborative relationship with the Community Center Society and other players of the community. And I think this was a step that was he was very much looking forward to towards that. And so I think it's maybe all the more important that we make this move today to have a liaison work with the Parksville Community Center Society and ensure that we've got a healthy and productive relationship on behalf of the community moving forward. So yeah, I was shocked to hear the news today, and I appreciate the board forwarding this information prior to the meeting. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that. I agree that timing is absolutely essential. Is there any further comments or discussion? Councillor Gore?
Mayor, I'm not aware of any of the news, but I do want to stress the important work that PCCS has done in our community. I want to thank Councillor Grens for taking the initiative, listening to the PCCS demand on this. I think it is time for us to build those constructive relationships and acknowledging what PCCS has accomplished since its inception and in the last few years as well. They are a trusted partner to us. They provide very essential services that a lot of our members of our community and outside in the other municipal regions benefit from. Sincere thanks to Mr. Round and all these board members and volunteers. Hopefully we can have a unanimous support for this. I look forward to a private conversation with councillors on what transpired. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further conversation? All those in favor? That passes unanimous. As of this moment, I appoint Councillor Grens as liaison to the PCCS. Do you accept? Thank you, Councillor Grants.
Well, I think the council needs to endorse that recommendation, Mayor.
No, no, it's just by mayor's appointment. Councillor Gore, thank you. Is there notice of motion? Notice of motion, Amit, do you plan to provide notice of the following motion to be considered at the December 1 meeting? You have a notice as well as this one? Okay, separate? Okay. That's great. Okay, I'll take Amit. Amit, sorry, Councillor Gore, could you read out your notice of motion for the record, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this has been sent via email to all council members, and I think staff has this as well, but I will read this out. Whereas Bill M216, titled the Professional Reliance Act, is a private member's bill that provides for the streamlining of development projects and reduction of administrative costs in the approval of development projects by local governments, and would, among other measures, require local governments to accept certified submissions from registered professionals as meeting permit or bylaw requirements, set out processes for dispute resolution and peer review, and address professional liability and protections. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Parksville formally expresses its opposition to this bill on the grounds that the legislation as described above would materially alter local approval authorities and the municipal review process. And be it further resolved that the mayor, on behalf of council, write to MLA George Henderson to convey the city's opposition to Bill M216 and to ask that any provincial changes to local approval processes be developed in consultation with local governments. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gore, and I can assure you that this has been a hot topic of conversation with our CAO and myself and others at the table here ever since this private member's bill was put forward. And there would be possibly some recommendations for reviewing and maybe change some of the wording anyways to get the exact message that we need to get across. But I appreciate this and we'll deal with that at the next meeting. Thank you for this. Yeah, Councillor Wood. Yes.
Thanks, Mayor. Since the MLA is just south of us, I was thinking, I'm not saying I'm on either side of this debate, but it might be interesting to at least offer the MLA an invite to Zoom or to be present for the discussion in case we have any questions for him. I think he's sitting and he'll be busy, but we could offer it to him. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't particularly think that's appropriate at this particular time, because the thing is that if you saw in the paper on the weekend anyways, MLA Anderson actually did a letter of explanation as to his reasonings for it and so forth. And I think that being made, and he's made it in the House type of thing. So it's a question of that we have to take the information that we have been given by him and his clarification of it, and then announce our support or non-support for that. I think it's good. And so we were looking at doing that anyways, and this just puts it on the record that this is what we're coming to. I think that that's the most professional way to handle it. Councillor Fratt, sorry, yeah.
If this
Just
is
a
going
note.
to come forward as a notice of motion, then can we have that information you spoke of provided with the motion? Because it'd be good to have all that information if we're going to weigh a decision on how we're going to support it. I don't think I feel I know enough one way or another to make an informed decision on it.
Right, and I think our CAO can make sure you get the latest information. Again, that you're from the MLA, that
Yeah,
latest
you
information.
mentioned that he released some information
Yeah.
over the weekend. That could be perhaps included with the notice of motion.
Yeah. Good point.
If I may, Mayor, this was sent out to us as council. So this letter is in the email. And I think a lot of information is available online. And that was the reason why it's a notice of motion. So it gives us all time to do the research.
Yeah, and CAO Kaylor, can you comment, please?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that it's been emailed, but if anyone needs a hard copy or forwarding to a different
We can just suggest if it's coming as a notice of motion to our agenda, if we can include the information in there as well, rather than having to scour around. I could see the email there, but I want to make sure it's the same information that I'm hearing about here and that it's all together.
If we can include it in the agenda package, CAO, thank you. Thank you. Any further comments? This is just a notice of motion, so that's great. Thank you. Is there any other notices of motion? Councillor Beal, would you like to introduce one?
Thank you. I would, yes. Thanks, everyone. Yes, a notice of motion. I intend to bring forward a motion for debate at the December 1st meeting, council meeting, seeking council support to sponsor a Bolinas secondary student to attend AVICC 2026 as a student delegate, with costs covered coming from contingency or the allocated conference budget, which we already have in place. And AVICC will cover some of the expenses, and the prospective student will be required to apply directly to AVICC for the opportunity to attend. There.
Thank you for that,
So-
Councillor Beal. We'll see that at the next council meeting. Yes.
If I may add that Teresa Dennison with AVICC did send out a letter with information about this program, and I believe the date was October 30th. So if people want to look in their email, they'll find it there.
Thank you. Great. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation pursuant to section 91 and C of the community chart? Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider an item relating to labor. Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Wood.
Do we do the liaison reports first?
Oh, sorry. You're right. I skipped a page. Sorry. I did. I skipped right over it. Thank
Yeah.
you. If I can just back up, I haven't asked for a mover secretary yet, so I haven't received one for that. So let's just back up. Back to the regular council meeting, under 8 for liaison reports. Do I have any liaison reports at this time to be heard?
Yeah.
Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, first on our list is Parkville and District Chamber of Commerce, but seeing as how they presented here at November 12th, I think they shared a lot of information about what they're focusing on right now. I will say that I did attend a dinner meeting just recently for the Chamber of Commerce. I was very pleased to see 2 other councillors there as well, Councillor Grenz and Councillor Wood. But I won't go into any further since they did present here so recently. May I go on?
Carry on.
Okay, thank you. Regarding Access Oceanside Association, I did attend their meeting, although since it was held November 12th as well, I had to leave early to come back here. But there was considerable, I will say considerable in bold caps, interest in the topic of bus stop amenities. As you can imagine, for many people, but particularly people who do have some mobility challenges and others, they absolutely require and rely on public transit. So improving accessibility, they were pleased to hear that that is a focus and highlighted a couple of spots that they're very familiar with. Also, a question that did come up that, well, I'll back up a wee bit. Everybody was quite disheartened to hear that the cost of putting in a bus shelter it would, at our present rate of funding, would take 2.5 years. So this means that, basically every 3rd year, 3 years, we could get 1 shelter. And people agreed that a shelter is, as critical, if not more so, than a bench, because you get out of the rain and the elements and so on. So that was a real concern. And one question that did come up was regarding advertising on whether it be bus benches or shelters. And I know that we had discussed that there could be advertising on bus stops that are in commercial areas. I should say not just commercial, but non-residential areas. So the question came up as to whether or not if there was advertising, would those funds go to the city and could they help offset the cost of bus of transit amenity. So I thought those were really good points to bring up.
Thank you.
Thank
Were
you.
Sorry, Councilor Beal, were you going to follow that with our CAO? Yeah, not now. No,
yes.
no, at a later time. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week I mentioned, and we all got this invitation to go to the museum to shop for Christmas. It is actually very beautiful. I went myself. I was able to get several small things. There's the artisan quality is way over the top. 28 artisans and all their things. Everything is there until the 21st of December. They're open from noon until 4 each day except Tuesday and Wednesday. So I suggest you go and have a look for my little nephews and others. You know, it was really, really lovely. So that's the main thing I was going to mention about that, to reaffirm that, because I did go and see. Also, they have the Child's Christmas in Wales, and I will mention it again in the next one, but there's one on Sunday, November 30th. And that is again a ticketed item, but a worthwhile event there. So there's lots of things going on, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. And I didn't say this in my report here, but I must reaffirm to shop local. I can't say it enough. Shop local, PDBA people will appreciate this. We're talking about all that goes on in our small community here. So if we look after our own, that'll pay off in the long run. So I just thought I'd mention that again. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Martin.
There was one thing I didn't say, I didn't write it down, but the other day, and this is something I thought about the season, I might say it later in December, but a gal I know, she's sponsoring a senior here locally. She met her on the street. She gives her food. She bought her a coat, winter coat. And I thought, you know, that is really, I mean, we have amazing volunteer organizations here, but that was something that each person could do. They show an interest in people. I thought that is an amazing thing to do. So her husband was telling me about this. And so I talked to her. She said, oh yeah, she's just in touch with her and gives her and looks after her. And I know the senior count on 2023, there was 25% of our seniors, 25% of the 103 people that were homeless were seniors. So there you go. So it's right here in our backyard, not just the kids too. So I just thought I'd pass that on. It's just,
Thank you.
It's about the season, I think. Yeah.
Thank you,
feeling that.
Councilor
Yeah,
Martin.
thank you.
We have now, I think, everything on a regular agenda wrapped up. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation pursuant to section 91C of the community charter? Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider an item relating to labor. Moved by Councilor Wood, second by Councilor Beal. All those in favor? We will now be in camera as soon as